I need you to marry me. Those 5 words shattered everything Daniel Harper thought he knew about survival. Standing in his boss's corner office, staring at a legal contract worth more than he'd earned in a lifetime, he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Victoria Hale, the woman who terrified entire boardrooms, was offering him a deal that could save his daughter's future. But marriages built on contracts don't end in happily ever after. They end in ruin. And Daniel was about to discover that some arrangements cost more than money. If you want to see how this impossible choice unfolds, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The eviction notice had been taped to Daniel Harper's apartment door for 3 days before he finally peeled it off. He stood in the narrow hallway of the rundown Denver complex, the paper trembling in his hands as fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The words blurred together: failure to pay, final warning, 10 days. But the meaning carved itself into his chest with brutal clarity. 10 days. That's all the time he had left before everything collapsed. Daniel crumpled the notice and shoved it into his jacket pocket, forcing himself to breathe. The hallway smelled like mildew and someone's burnt dinner. Through the thin walls, he could hear a couple arguing, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm he'd grown numb to over the past 2 years. This building wasn't a home. It was a holding cell for people who couldn't afford anything better. But it was all he had. "Daddy!" The small voice cut through his spiral of panic. Daniel turned to find Lily standing in their doorway, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. She was wearing the pink pajamas with the worn elbows, the ones he'd been meaning to replace for months. Her dark hair stuck up in odd angles, and her brown eyes, so much like her mother's, studied him with that unnerving perceptiveness that 6-year-olds sometimes possessed. "Hey, Bug." Daniel forced brightness into his voice and walked toward her, tucking the eviction notice deeper into his pocket. "What are you doing up? It's past bedtime." "I heard a sound." Lily stepped aside to let him into the apartment. "Like someone hitting our door." "Just the wind," Daniel lied smoothly, locking the deadbolt behind them. "Come on, let's get you back to bed." Their apartment was a study in controlled chaos. Toys scattered across the threadbare carpet mixed with work papers Daniel had brought home. The kitchen sink dripped with a rhythm that had become white noise. The heater rattled in the corner, struggling to push warmth through rooms that leaked cold through cracked window frames. Daniel had learned to ignore most of it: the peeling paint, the stained ceiling, the way the whole place felt like it was slowly folding in on itself. But tonight, with the eviction notice burning a hole in his pocket, he saw it all with horrible clarity. Lily climbed back into her bed, which was really just a mattress on a metal frame Daniel had found at a thrift store. He'd covered it with cheerful sheets he couldn't afford and surrounded it with every stuffed animal he could scrounge from garage sales. If he couldn't give her stability, he could at least give her something soft to hold on to. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was smaller now, uncertain. "Are we going to be okay?" The question landed like a punch. Daniel sat on the edge of her bed and smoothed her hair back, his throat tight. "Of course we are. Why would you ask that?" "Sarah at school said her family had to move because they didn't have money. She said they had a paper on their door just like we did." Lily's fingers twisted in her rabbit's ears. "I saw the paper, Daddy, before you took it down." Daniel's heart cracked. He tried so hard to shield her from this, from the crushing weight of bills he couldn't pay, from the medical debt that had swallowed their lives whole, from the constant terror of losing what little they had. But Lily was too smart, too aware. She'd inherited that from her mother, along with those observant eyes that missed nothing. "Listen to me, Bug." Daniel cupped her small face in his hands. "I promise you, we're going to be okay. I'm handling everything. You don't need to worry about papers or moving or anything else. That's my job. Your job is to be 6 and play and do your homework and let me worry about the grown-up stuff. Deal?" Lily studied him for a long moment, and Daniel saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was deciding whether to believe him, whether to trust that the one stable thing in her world, her father, could actually keep the promises he made. Finally, she nodded. "Deal." "Good." Daniel kissed her forehead and tucked the blankets around her. "Now sleep. We've got a big day tomorrow." He stayed beside her bed until her breathing evened out and her grip on the stuffed rabbit loosened. Only then did he allow himself to move back into the living room where he collapsed onto the sagging couch and pulled out the eviction notice. 10 days. Daniel stared at the ceiling, listening to the heater rattle and the couple next door start another round of screaming. He'd been here before, backed into a corner with no visible way out. After Emily died, he'd learned to survive on coffee and willpower, juggling rent and groceries and childcare while trying to keep his job at Sterling and Associates. He'd learned to smile through exhaustion, to hide overdue notices in his desk drawer, to pretend everything was fine even as his world slowly crumbled. But this was different. This was the end of the line. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Daniel grabbed it, hoping irrationally that it might be a solution, a forgotten tax refund, a miracle. Instead, it was an email from his landlord with the subject line, "Final notice, no exceptions." Daniel didn't bother opening it. He already knew what it would say. The medical bills from his father's final illness sat in a folder on the shelf, thousands upon thousands of dollars that insurance had deemed not covered. Daniel had tried payment plans, had negotiated with billing departments, had done everything short of selling his organs, but the debt had grown faster than he could fight it, spreading like cancer through his credit score and his bank account until there was nothing left to negotiate with. He'd thought about bankruptcy. He'd researched it late at night while Lily slept, reading about fresh starts and clean slates. But bankruptcy wouldn't save them from eviction. It wouldn't put food on the table or keep Lily in her school. It would just be another failure to add to the pile. Daniel closed his eyes and tried to imagine what came next. A homeless shelter, living in his car, calling distant relatives he hadn't spoken to in years and begging for help. Every option made him feel like he was drowning. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a calendar reminder. Staff meeting, 9 a.m., Victoria's office. Daniel's stomach dropped. He'd forgotten about the meeting. Victoria Hale, the executive creative director at Sterling and Associates, had sent out a cryptic email last week requesting individual meetings with several junior staff members. Daniel had assumed it was about layoffs. The company had been restructuring for months, and junior copywriters were always the first to go. Perfect timing. Lose his job and his apartment in the same week. Idiots. The Sterling and Associates building stood like a glass monument in downtown Denver, all gleaming windows and modern architecture that screamed success. Daniel felt out of place the moment he walked through the revolving doors, his worn jacket and off-brand shoes marking him as someone who didn't quite belong in this world of polished marble and designer furniture. He'd been working here for 3 years, ever since Emily died, and he'd needed something stable. The pay was decent, enough to keep them afloat when combined with careful budgeting and occasional freelance work. The benefits covered Lily's pediatrician visits. The office had a coffee machine that actually worked, but Daniel had never felt like he truly belonged here. While his coworkers talked about weekend trips and restaurant openings, he counted pennies and clipped coupons. While they stayed late to network at company happy hours, he rushed home to relieve the neighbor who watched Lily. He existed in a parallel universe, present but separate. "Daniel Harper?" The receptionist's voice snapped him back to reality. She was new. They were always new, bright-faced college graduates who lasted about 6 months before moving on to something better. She smiled at him with professional detachment. "Miss Hale is ready for you. Top floor, corner office." Daniel nodded and headed for the elevators, his heart hammering. He'd only been to Victoria's office once before, during his initial interview. The memory was hazy now, but he remembered being intimidated by the woman who'd grilled him on his portfolio with laser precision. Victoria Hale was a legend at Sterling and Associates. At 35, she'd climbed from junior account manager to executive creative director through a combination of ruthless intelligence and creative brilliance that bordered on supernatural. She'd salvaged dying campaigns, landed impossible clients, and built the company's reputation into something formidable. She was beautiful in a way that felt calculated. Sharp suits, perfect hair, makeup that enhanced rather than concealed. But it was her mind that terrified people. Victoria could dismantle an argument in seconds, could spot weakness like a shark smelling blood. And Daniel was about to walk into her office knowing he was weak in every way that mattered. The elevator deposited him on the top floor where everything was quieter, more expensive. Thick carpet muffled his footsteps. Abstract art hung on walls painted in subtle grays. The receptionist up here looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine. Mr. Harper? She didn't wait for confirmation. Miss Hale is expecting you. Go right in. Victoria's office occupied the entire corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Denver and the mountains beyond. The space was immaculate. Minimalist furniture, carefully curated artwork, not a single paper out of place. It felt less like an office and more like a carefully constructed statement. I am in control of everything. Victoria herself stood by the windows, her back to the door. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that looked effortless, but was certainly anything but. Close the door, please. Her voice was cool, measured. Daniel did as instructed, suddenly aware of how his palms were sweating. Victoria turned to face him, and Daniel was struck again by how beautiful she was. High cheekbones, green eyes that missed nothing, a mouth that rarely smiled. She studied him with the same intensity she probably brought to campaign proposals, cataloging details. Sit. Daniel sank into the chair across from her desk, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Victoria remained standing for a moment longer, maintaining the power dynamic, before finally taking her own seat. You're probably wondering why I called you here. I assumed it was about layoffs, Daniel said, deciding honesty was his only option, or performance issues. Your performance is adequate. Victoria's tone suggested adequate was barely worth mentioning. You meet deadlines. Your work is competent. You don't cause problems. Thank you. Daniel wasn't sure if he'd just been complimented or insulted. I'm not here to discuss your work. Victoria opened a folder on her desk, and Daniel's stomach dropped when he recognized the documents inside. Financial records, background checks, personal information he definitely hadn't authorized anyone to access. I've been researching you, Daniel. Your financial situation is dire. Medical debt from your father's illness. Behind on rent, credit cards maxed out. You're 3 paychecks away from complete disaster. Victoria's eyes flicked up to meet his. How am I doing so far? Heat flooded Daniel's face. I don't know what this has to do with you have a daughter, Lily, 6 years old, attends Lincoln Elementary. Your wife died in a car accident 2 years ago. Victoria continued as if he hadn't spoken. You have no family support system, no savings, no safety net. This is completely inappropriate. Daniel started to stand, anger cutting through his humiliation. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but sit down. The command in Victoria's voice stopped him cold. She wasn't angry or defensive. She was simply stating a fact. He would sit down. And somehow Daniel found himself obeying. Victoria folded her hands on the desk, her expression unreadable. I need something from you, Daniel. And in exchange, I can give you something you desperately need. I suggest you listen to the full proposal before you make any decisions. What kind of proposal? A business arrangement. Victoria pulled a document from the folder and slid it across the desk. I need you to marry me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel stared at her, certain he'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Marriage. Legal, binding, 1 year in duration. Victoria's tone was as casual as if she were discussing lunch plans. You would move into my penthouse with your daughter. In exchange for maintaining the appearance of a legitimate relationship, I will clear all your debts, pay for Lily's education, and provide you with a substantial financial settlement at the end of our agreement. Daniel's brain struggled to process what he was hearing. This is insane. This is practical. Victoria tapped the document. Read it. The terms are clearly outlined. With shaking hands, Daniel pulled the contract toward him. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out with shocking clarity. 1 year from date of marriage, debt forgiveness totaling $347,000, monthly stipend of $15,000, educational trust fund for minor dependent. The numbers were staggering, life-changing, impossible. Why? Daniel looked up from the contract. Why would you possibly need to marry someone you barely know? Why me? For the first time, something flickered across Victoria's composed features. Not vulnerability exactly, but something close to it. My family owns 40% of this company. My mother sits on the board, and she's decided that my single status reflects poorly on Sterling and Associates' image. So get a boyfriend. I don't have time for the organic development of a relationship. Victoria's jaw tightened. My mother has made it clear that unless I demonstrate personal stability, her words, she will vote to replace me as creative director. She's already courting candidates. I have 3 months to change her mind. And you think a fake marriage will do that? I think a carefully managed marriage to someone appropriate will satisfy her concerns long enough for me to consolidate my position. Victoria leaned forward. You need money. I need a husband. This is a transaction that benefits us both. Daniel's mind reeled. This is fraud. It's illegal. We could go to jail. It's a marriage of convenience, which is perfectly legal. People have been doing it for centuries. Victoria's voice remained infuriatingly calm. The contract protects both of us. You get financial security. I get to keep my career. No one needs to know the details of our arrangement. Everyone would know. You're a public figure. How would we possibly convince people this is real? We'll craft a narrative. We've been secretly dating for months. We fell in love. We decided to make it official. Victoria shrugged as if scripting their entire relationship was a minor detail. I've built careers on less plausible stories. Daniel stood up, the contract falling from his hands. I can't do this. This is crazy. I have a daughter to think about. I can't just... Your daughter is exactly who you should be thinking about. Victoria's words cut like a knife. You have an eviction notice, 10 days before you're homeless. What happens to Lily then? Foster care? Living in your car? How long before child services decides you're an unfit parent? The cruelty of it stole Daniel's breath. But worse than the cruelty was the truth. He'd been thinking the same thing during sleepless nights. He'd been terrified of exactly that scenario. You're a good father, Daniel. I can see that from everything I've learned about you. Victoria's voice softened, just slightly. But being a good father isn't enough when you can't pay rent. This arrangement gives you the resources to actually provide for your daughter. Real security, a real future. And what does she think? Daniel gestured at the contract. How do I explain to a 6-year-old that daddy's marrying his boss for money? You tell her you fell in love. Victoria stood and walked around the desk, closing the distance between them. Children understand love. They don't need to understand the complexities of adult arrangements. Lying to my daughter about something this big, you're already lying to her. The words landed like a slap. You told her everything was fine. You promised her she didn't need to worry, but you can't keep that promise without help. This gives you the ability to actually mean it when you tell her she's safe. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to storm out of the office and tell Victoria Hale exactly where she could shove her contract. But his phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of the eviction notice, the overdue bills, the constant juggling act that was slowly destroying him. I need time to think. You have until Monday. Victoria returned to her desk, the brief moment of something almost human vanishing back behind her professional mask. That gives you 4 days. The contract is yours to review. I've included my personal number if you have questions. And if I say no? Victoria met his eyes. Then you say no. I'll find another solution to my problem, and you'll find another solution to yours. The implication was clear. There were no other solutions. Daniel grabbed the contract with numb fingers and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Victoria spoke again. Daniel? He turned back. She stood silhouetted against the windows, the mountains rising behind her like something out of a painting. I know this seems impossible, but impossible arrangements work every day. This is just business. We both know what we're getting into. That's more than most marriages can say. Daniel left without responding. He walked through the pristine hallways, rode the elevator down, and stepped out into Denver's afternoon sunshine feeling like he'd just left an alternate dimension. The contract burned in his hands. Lily was at the neighbor's apartment when Daniel got home. Mrs. Chen was a retired teacher who watched Lily for a fraction of what actual daycare would cost. She was kind and patient, but Daniel knew he was already pushing the boundaries of her generosity. How many more weeks could he ask her to help before she politely declined? He picked Lily up at 6, listening to her chatter about art class and the butterfly her teacher had brought in. She was so bright, so happy, despite everything. Daniel held her hand as they walked back to their apartment and tried not to think about how this might be one of their last weeks here. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel spread the contract across their scratched coffee table and read every word. The terms were exactly as Victoria had outlined. marriage for 1 year, complete debt forgiveness, monthly stipend, education fund. In exchange, Daniel would move into Victoria's penthouse, attend social functions as her husband, maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship. At the end of 12 months, they would quietly divorce. Daniel would receive an additional settlement of $100,000. The numbers didn't feel real. $300,000 in debt relief alone. That was more than he'd make in years of work. Add the stipend and the settlement, and Daniel was looking at complete financial transformation for 1 year of pretending. But what would it do to Lily? Moving her to a stranger's home, asking her to accept Victoria as some kind of stepmother, building a life on a foundation of lies? What happened at the end when the year was up and everything disappeared? Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Daniel, it's Victoria. Her voice was quieter than it had been in the office, less commanding. I hope I'm not calling too late. Lily's asleep. It's fine. A pause. Daniel could hear soft music in the background, something classical. I wanted to clarify something. The contract includes provisions for Lily's well-being, private school if you choose, healthcare, therapy if she needs help adjusting. This isn't just about money for you. I understand you have a child to consider. Do you? The question came out harsher than Daniel intended. Have you ever had to explain to a 6-year-old why her entire life is changing? Do you have any idea what it's like to... No. Victoria's simple admission stopped his anger cold. I don't. I've never had children. I've never had to put another person's needs before my career. But I'm not proposing this arrangement blindly, Daniel. I've researched what Lily would need. I'm prepared to accommodate her. She's not a campaign to manage. I know that. Victoria sounded almost frustrated. I'm not good at this, at explaining things that aren't business. But I'm trying to tell you that I understand this affects more than just you and me. I'm not asking you to sacrifice your daughter for my benefit. Daniel closed his eyes, the contract swimming in his vision. What happens to her when this ends? We build this life, this family, and then what? I tell her it was all fake? You tell her people sometimes grow apart. You tell her you both tried, but it didn't work out. Victoria's voice softened. Divorce is painful, but it's survivable. You know that. You've survived worse. The reference to Emily hit harder than Victoria probably intended. Daniel had survived worse. He'd survived losing his wife, rebuilding his life, learning to be both parents to a grieving little girl, but that had been real. This would be theater. I need more time. You have until Monday. Victoria, Daniel struggled for words. If we do this, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me you won't hurt her? His voice cracked. Whatever happens between us, whatever this arrangement becomes, promise me you won't hurt my daughter. The silence stretched so long Daniel thought she'd hung up. Then, I promise. I'll do everything I can to make sure Lily is protected. You have my word. It shouldn't have meant anything. A promise from a woman who was essentially hiring him to be her husband. But something in Victoria's voice made Daniel believe her. I'll give you my answer Monday, he said quietly. That's all I ask. Victoria hung up without saying goodbye. Daniel sat alone in the dark apartment, the contract in his hands and Lily's soft breathing coming from the bedroom. 10 days until eviction. 4 days until his answer was due. Daniel thought about Emily, wondered what she would say if she could see him now. Would she tell him to run? To protect Lily from this insanity? Or would she understand that sometimes survival meant making impossible choices? He read the contract one more time, his finger tracing over the clause about Lily's education fund. 1 year. 12 months of pretending. In exchange for a future that didn't involve sleeping in his car. Daniel pulled out his phone and typed a message before he could stop himself. I need to know this is legal. Can you send me your lawyer's contact information? Victoria's response came immediately. Sending now. Call him tomorrow. The lawyer's information arrived seconds later along with one more message. Whatever you decide, Daniel, no pressure, but they both knew that was a lie. The eviction notice in his pocket was all the pressure he needed. Saturday morning arrived with weak sunlight and a text from the landlord. Rent payment required by Tuesday or locks will be changed. Daniel fed Lily breakfast and tried to smile while his mind spun through scenarios. He called Victoria's lawyer, spent an hour on the phone getting confirmation that yes, the contract was legal, and yes, Victoria Hale had the resources to back up every promise she'd made. "Is this really what you want to do?" the lawyer asked at the end of their conversation. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, "but I think it might be what I need to do." He spent the weekend in a fog, going through motions while his brain churned. Took Lily to the park, made mac and cheese for dinner, read bedtime stories. Normal life continuing while everything underneath shifted. Sunday night, Daniel sat in Lily's room while she slept and finally let himself imagine it. Victoria's penthouse. Financial security. Lily in a good school with new clothes and opportunities Daniel could never provide alone. A year of pretending in exchange for a lifetime of stability. He thought about the moment in Victoria's office when she'd promised to protect Lily. Something in her eyes had been genuine, he was almost certain. Or maybe he was just desperate enough to believe it. Daniel pulled out his phone at midnight, his finger hovering over Victoria's contact. One message would change everything. One word, yes or no, would set his future in motion. He thought about Emily one more time, thought about the vows they'd made in a small church with secondhand flowers and borrowed rings, for better or worse. He'd meant those words, had believed in them. This wouldn't be that. This would be a contract, a performance. But maybe that's what made it possible. No false promises about love, just two people making an arrangement that benefited them both. Daniel typed, "I'll do it. When do we start?" Victoria's response was immediate, like she'd been waiting. "Tomorrow. Bring Lily to my place at 6 p.m. We have a lot to plan." Daniel stared at his phone, his heart hammering. He'd just agreed to marry his boss. He'd just agreed to upend his daughter's entire life. He'd just agreed to spend a year living a lie. But when he looked at the eviction notice on his nightstand, at the stack of bills he couldn't pay, at his daughter sleeping peacefully because she still believed Daddy could fix everything, he knew he'd made the only choice he could. The contract marriage of Daniel Harper and Victoria Hale would begin tomorrow, and neither of them had any idea how completely it would change them both. Victoria's building rose above Denver like a monument to everything Daniel wasn't. Glass and steel gleaming in the evening light, a doorman in an actual uniform, marble floors that reflected the chandelier hanging in the lobby like captured stars. Daniel held Lily's hand tighter as they approached, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her eyes wide as she took in the towering structure. "Daddy, is this where we're going?" Lily's voice echoed in the cavernous lobby. "Yeah, Bug. Remember I told you we were visiting someone?" "Your friend from work." Lily looked up at him, those two perceptive eyes studying his face. "The one you said was really nice." Daniel's throat tightened around the lie. He'd spent all day crafting the story, keeping it simple enough for a 6-year-old to believe. Victoria was his friend. They'd been spending time together. She wanted to meet Lily. Each word had felt like glass in his mouth, but Lily had accepted it with the faith children have in their parents. The doorman approached with a professional smile. "Mr. Harper, Miss Hale is expecting you. Top floor, penthouse suite." Of course, Victoria had already notified security. Daniel nodded his thanks and guided Lily toward the elevators, his palm sweating against hers. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting, and Daniel caught sight of himself. Rumpled jacket, off-brand jeans, scuffed shoes, standing next to his daughter in her dinosaur t-shirt and light-up sneakers. They looked like they'd wandered into the wrong story. "It's really tall," Lily whispered as the elevator climbed. "Are we going to the very top?" "All the way to the top." The elevator doors opened directly into Victoria's penthouse, and Daniel's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Denver at dusk, the city spreading out in a carpet of lights below them. The apartment was enormous, sleek furniture in grays and whites, abstract art on the walls, everything positioned with the kind of deliberate precision that screamed interior designer. It was beautiful and cold and utterly unlike any place Daniel had ever lived. Victoria stood by the windows, backlit by the sunset. She changed from her usual business attire into dark jeans and a cream sweater, an attempt at casual that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. Her hair was down, softening her features, and when she turned to face them, Daniel saw something flicker across her expression before the professional mask settled back into place. Nervousness. Victoria Hale was nervous. "Daniel, thank you for coming." Victoria's eyes dropped to Lily, and her voice gentled. And you must be Lily. Lily pressed closer to Daniel's leg, suddenly shy. Hi. Hi. Victoria crouched down, putting herself at eye level with the child. I've heard a lot about you. Your dad says you're really good at drawing. I like butterflies best. Lily's grip on Daniel's hand loosened slightly. And horses. But mostly butterflies. Butterflies are excellent. Victoria smiled, and it transformed her face into something warmer, more human. I have some art supplies in the other room if you'd like to draw while your dad and I talk. Would that be okay? Lily looked up at Daniel for permission. He nodded, and she followed Victoria across the vast living room to a smaller space that had been set up with a child-sized table, new markers, and pristine paper. Daniel noticed the stuffed animals arranged on a nearby shelf, careful, calculated preparation. I wasn't sure what she liked, Victoria said quietly as Lily settled in to draw. So I got a variety. This is... Daniel gestured at the setup. You didn't have to do all this? Yes, I did. Victoria straightened, and just like that, the businesswoman returned. Come, we need to talk details. She led him to the dining room where a folder waited on the glass table. Through the doorway, Daniel could see Lily humming to herself as she drew, content in her own world. The distance should have been comforting, but instead it made him feel like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Sit. Victoria pulled out a chair and opened the folder. We have a lot to cover before the wedding. The wedding. Daniel's voice came out strangled. When exactly? Friday. City Hall, noon. Just us and the witnesses. Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact, like she was scheduling a dental appointment. My lawyer will handle the paperwork. Afterward, we'll release a statement to select media outlets. Nothing too public yet. We'll build toward that gradually. Friday is 4 days away. Yes, which is why we need to use our time efficiently. Victoria pulled out a document. This is the official story. We met at the office 6 months ago. Professional respect turned into something more. We kept it quiet to avoid workplace complications. 3 months ago, we started dating seriously. Last week, I proposed. You said yes. Daniel stared at the typed narrative, his entire fictional relationship reduced to bullet points. You proposed? It fits my personality better, more believable than you proposing to your boss. Victoria's lips quirked. Unless you'd prefer to be the one who asked. No, Daniel rubbed his face. This is insane. People are going to ask questions. They're going to want details. Which is why we're creating them now. Victoria pulled out another document, this one filled with handwritten notes. First date, Italian restaurant, Marconi's on Larimer Street. You ordered the carbonara, I had the risotto. We talked about art and advertising for 3 hours. Second date, hiking at Red Rocks. You brought sandwiches. I surprised you by actually enjoying it. You hike? No, but in our story I do. Victoria's eyes met his. This works if we commit to it completely, Daniel. Half measures will destroy us. We need a history that feels lived in, real. Details matter. She was right, of course. Daniel looked down at the timeline Victoria had constructed, their fake relationship mapped out with the same precision she probably brought to advertising campaigns. First kiss. 1 month in, after a gallery opening. Meeting each other's friends. 2 months. First time saying I love you? 3.5 months, Victoria's penthouse, late at night after wine and conversation. When did you tell Lily about us? Daniel asked, scanning the timeline. 2 weeks ago. You sat her down and explained that you'd been seeing someone special. She was cautious at first, but warmed up when she met me. Victoria paused. How do you actually want to handle this with her? The question was so direct it caught Daniel off guard. I told her you were my friend from work, that we've been spending time together and you wanted to meet her. That's good. Simple. Victoria made a note. We can build from there. Tonight she meets me. Over the next few days, she sees us together more. By Friday, it won't seem completely out of nowhere when we tell her we're getting married. She's 6. She's going to have questions. Then we answer them. Victoria's voice softened. I'm not suggesting we lie to her more than necessary, Daniel, but children adjust faster than adults. If we present this as a happy thing, she'll accept it as a happy thing. From the other room, Lily called out, Daddy, can I show you my picture? Daniel stood gratefully, needing a moment away from timelines and fabricated memories. Lily had drawn a butterfly in bright markers, its wings spreading across the entire page in a riot of color. "It's beautiful, Bug." "It's for Miss Victoria." Lily held up the drawing proudly. "Because she said she likes butterflies." Victoria appeared in the doorway, and something unguarded crossed her face when she saw the drawing. "That's for me?" "Uh-huh. To say thank you for the markers." Lily carefully tore the page from the pad and held it out. "You can put it on your fridge." Victoria accepted the drawing like it was made of spun glass. "I will. Thank you, Lily. This is the nicest thing anyone's given me in a long time." The sincerity in her voice surprised Daniel. Victoria crossed to the kitchen, all stainless steel and marble counters, and used a magnet to attach the butterfly to the refrigerator. The splash of color looked absurd against all that sleek perfection, but Victoria stepped back to admire it like it was a masterpiece. "Perfect," she said, and Lily beamed. They ordered pizza for dinner, which felt surreal in Victoria's pristine penthouse. Lily ate at the breakfast bar, legs swinging, telling Victoria about her school and her teacher and the caterpillar they were growing in a jar. Victoria listened with an attention that seemed genuine, asking questions, remembering details. She was good at this, Daniel realized, good at making people feel heard. When Lily excused herself to use the bathroom, Victoria turned to Daniel. "She's wonderful. Bright, creative, well-adjusted despite everything she's been through." "I try." Daniel pushed his half-eaten pizza around his plate. "She's the only thing I've done right in the last 2 years." "Then we make sure we don't mess that up." Victoria's voice carried an edge of determination. "Whatever happens with this arrangement, Lily comes first. Agreed?" "Agreed." Lily returned and asked if she could watch TV. Victoria showed her to the media room, another space that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and set her up with a cartoon. When she returned to the dining room, she carried 2 glasses of wine. "I don't usually drink on weeknights," Daniel said. "Tonight's not usual." Victoria handed him a glass and settled into the chair across from him. "We should talk about the actual living situation. You'll move in this weekend. I've prepared one of the guest rooms for Lily. It's the one with the best natural light. The master suite has enough space for both of us, but there's a sitting room attached that can be converted into your private area if you prefer." "We're sharing a bedroom?" "We're married. People will visit. Staff will be in and out. It needs to look legitimate." Victoria sipped her wine. "But I'm not unreasonable, Daniel. I understand this is a professional arrangement. We can establish boundaries." "Boundaries?" Daniel laughed, the sound bitter. "We're living together, raising my daughter together, pretending to be in love. What boundaries are left?" "The ones we decide on." Victoria set down her glass. "This doesn't have to be more complicated than we make it. We present a united front in public. In private, we maintain whatever distance you need. I have late nights at the office frequently. You'll have plenty of space." "What about Lily? She's going to expect us to act like—" Daniel struggled for the word. "Like parents. Like a family." "Then we act like a family." Victoria's tone suggested this was obvious. "We have dinner together. We help with homework. We maintain routines. None of that requires us to be actually in love, Daniel. It just requires us to be present." He wanted to argue that it was more complicated than that Lily would sense the artifice. But looking at Victoria's calm expression, her absolute certainty that this could work, he felt his objections crumble. Maybe she was right. Maybe children were more resilient than he gave them credit for. "Okay," Daniel said quietly, "we try this, but if at any point I think it's hurting Lily, then we stop, we adjust, we find another way." Victoria leaned forward. "I'm not a monster, Daniel. I don't want to hurt a child. This works if we're honest with each other about what's working and what isn't. Honest. In our fake marriage. Honest about the parameters of our fake marriage." Victoria's lips quirked into something that might have been a smile. "There's a difference." They talked through logistics until the wine was gone and Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, I'm tired." Daniel glanced at his watch, nearly 9. Way past bedtime. "Okay, Bug. Let's get you home." "Actually," Victoria stood, "why don't you stay tonight? Lily's room is ready. It might help her adjust to the space before the weekend." Daniel wanted to refuse, wanted the safety of their crumbling apartment for one more night. But Lily was already yawning, and the practical part of his brain recognized the sense in Victoria's suggestion. Okay, just for tonight. Victoria led them down a hallway lined with more abstract art, past what looked like a home office and a guest suite, to a room at the end that made Daniel's heart clench. It had been transformed into a child's dream: soft purple walls, a bed with a white canopy, shelves lined with books and toys, a reading nook by the window, string lights casting gentle stars across the ceiling. "Wow," Lily whispered, all traces of tiredness vanishing. "This is for me? If you like it." Victoria hung back in the doorway. "We can change anything you want. Different colors, different decorations. Whatever makes you happy." Lily ran to the bed and bounced on it, experimentally, her face lit with pure joy. "It's perfect. Daddy, look, there's even a window seat." Daniel looked at Victoria, who was watching Lily with an expression he couldn't quite read. "This is too much." "It's a bedroom. Every child deserves a nice bedroom." Victoria turned to him, her voice dropping. "Your room is next door. I'm at the end of the hall. Bathroom is across here. Make yourself comfortable." She left before Daniel could respond, her footsteps silent on the plush carpet. Daniel helped Lily change into the pajamas they'd packed, brushed her teeth in a bathroom that was bigger than their current bedroom, and tucked her into the expensive sheets that probably cost more than his car. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was small in the darkness. "Is this really going to be my room?" "Yeah, Bug, starting this weekend." "And we're going to live here? With Miss Victoria?" Daniel's chest tightened. "Is that okay with you?" Lily was quiet for a long moment. "I like her. She's nice, and she put up my butterfly." "She did." "Are you and Miss Victoria?" Lily struggled with the words. "Are you like boyfriend and girlfriend?" Here it was, the first real lie to his daughter's face. Daniel swallowed hard. "We've been spending time together, getting to know each other, and we really like each other. Is that okay?" "I guess so." Lily twisted her fingers in the sheet. "I don't really remember Mommy very much anymore." The confession broke something in Daniel's chest. "That's okay, sweetheart. You were really little. But if you have a girlfriend now, does that mean you don't love Mommy anymore?" "No, Bug. I'll always love your Mommy. She gave me the best gift I've ever gotten. You." Daniel smoothed Lily's hair back. "But sometimes people's hearts have room for more than one person, and it's okay to let new people in. Your mom would want us to be happy." He hoped that was true. Hoped Emily would understand this impossible choice he was making. Lily nodded sleepily. "I like Miss Victoria. She listened when I talked about butterflies. Most grown-ups don't really listen." "Yeah, she's good at that." Daniel stayed until Lily's breathing evened out, then crept from the room and found his own bedroom next door. It was simpler than Lily's, but still luxurious. A queen bed with crisp linens, a reading chair by the window, an attached bathroom with a shower that probably had better water pressure than their entire apartment building. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his phone. The eviction notice was still in his email, a reminder of everything he was escaping. In 4 days, he'd be married to Victoria Hale. In 3 days, he and Lily would move into this penthouse permanently. A soft knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Victoria stood in the doorway, still in her jeans and sweater, hair slightly mussed. "She's asleep?" "Out cold." Daniel gestured at the room. "This is all... it's too much." "It's adequate." Victoria leaned against the doorframe. "How did she handle the conversation about us?" "Better than I expected. She asked if we were boyfriend and girlfriend." Daniel's laugh was hollow. "I told her we really liked each other. First official lie." "Not a lie. We do like each other, professionally." Victoria's expression softened. "This is harder for you than I anticipated." "I'm moving my daughter into a stranger's home based on a contract. Yeah, it's hard. I'm not a stranger. I'm your employer who's offering you a mutually beneficial arrangement." Victoria crossed her arms. "But I understand the distinction matters to you." "Doesn't it matter to you?" Daniel stood, frustrated. "Doesn't any of this feel wrong to you?" "Wrong?" Victoria considered the word. "No. Unusual, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But not wrong. We're two adults making a rational choice about our futures. No one's being hurt. No one's being deceived beyond what they need to be for both our sakes." "Lily's being deceived." "Lily's being protected. Victoria's voice sharpened. From homelessness, from instability, from watching her father fall apart trying to survive. Is that really worse than the truth? Daniel wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. Because Victoria was right. The truth was that he was desperate and broke and out of options. The truth was that this arrangement, as bizarre as it was, gave Lily a better life than he could provide alone. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, her tone gentling. "I know this is difficult. I'm asking you to trust me with something incredibly precious. I don't take that lightly." "Then help me understand why." Daniel moved closer. "Why me? You could have anyone. Someone from your world, someone who'd fit better. I don't want someone from my world." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I've dated men from my world. They want access to my money, my connections, my company. They want the version of me that photographs well. You want stability for your daughter. That's honest. I can work with honest. And you trust me not to want more?" "I trust you to honor the contract." Victoria met his eyes. "And I trust you to care more about Lily's well-being than any potential windfall. That makes you safe." Safe. Daniel turned the word over in his mind. He'd never thought of himself as safe, but he supposed from Victoria's perspective, from the perspective of a woman who'd built an empire and had to protect it, he was the safest choice possible. A struggling single father with everything to lose. "Okay," he said finally. "We do this. But I need you to promise me something else." "What?" "If Lily asks you a direct question, don't lie to her." Daniel's voice was steady. "We can craft stories and control the narrative, but if she asks you point blank, if you love me, if this is real, don't lie to her face." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "Then let's hope she doesn't ask." It wasn't a promise, but it was honest. Daniel supposed that was all he could expect. Victoria left him alone in the guest room, and Daniel lay awake in expensive sheets, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling, listening to his daughter breathe in the room next door. In 4 days, he'd stand in City Hall and marry a woman he barely knew. In 4 days, his entire life would change. But when he thought about the eviction notice, the bills, the constant terror of not being enough, Daniel couldn't make himself regret it. The wedding happened exactly as Victoria had orchestrated. City Hall at noon on Friday, with her lawyer and his assistant serving as witnesses. Daniel wore a suit Victoria had sent over the night before, perfectly tailored, probably obscenely expensive. Victoria wore ivory and looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. The ceremony took 7 minutes. They signed papers. The officiant pronounced them married. Victoria kissed him once, briefly, her lips cool against his. It was over before Daniel fully processed it was happening. "Congratulations," the lawyer said, shaking both their hands. "The press release will go out this afternoon." They left City Hall as husband and wife. A car waited to take them to Victoria's penthouse. Their penthouse now, Daniel supposed. Lily was at school, unaware that her father had just legally bound himself to his boss. "How do you feel?" Victoria asked as the car merged into traffic. "Married." Daniel stared at the ring on his finger, a simple platinum band that somehow felt heavier than it should. "You?" "Relieved. Step 1 is complete." Victoria pulled out her phone and began typing. "Now we move to step 2, public introduction. There's a gala next Saturday. You'll need another suit." "A gala?" "Corporate fundraiser. Everyone important will be there, including my mother." Victoria's fingers paused on her phone. "She'll want to meet you. And Lily." "Absolutely not." Daniel turned to face her. "I am not parading my 6-year-old daughter in front of your mother like some kind of proof of concept. It's not a parade. It's dinner." Victoria's tone was patient. "My mother will expect to meet my new family. If we refuse, it raises questions. Then she can meet me. Lily stays out of this." "Daniel," "That's the line, Victoria." His voice was hard. "You want me to play the devoted husband? Fine. You want me at galas and meetings and photo ops? I'll be there. But Lily is not a prop. She goes to school, she comes home, she lives as normal a life as possible. That was the deal." Victoria studied him for a long moment. "All right, dinner with my mother, just the 3 of us, no gala. But eventually she will need to meet Lily." "Eventually, not now." "Agreed." The car pulled up to the building, and they rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened to the penthouse, Daniel was struck again by how foreign it all felt. His and Lily's belongings had been moved in over the past few days. Their clothes now hung in massive closets, Lily's toys arranged on her new shelves, their few photographs scattered among Victoria's minimalist decor like artifacts from another world. "I have a call at 2, Victoria said, checking her watch. "Then meetings until 6. What's your schedule?" "I'm picking up Lily at 3:30. Mrs. Chen is watching her until then." "You should tell Mrs. Chen the car service is available. No need for her to drive." Victoria was already heading toward her office, heels clicking on the hardwood. "And Daniel, we should probably tell Lily tonight about the marriage." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Tonight?" "The press release is live. By tomorrow everyone will know. Better she hears it from us first." Victoria paused in the doorway. "Unless you think we should wait." "No, you're right." Daniel rubbed his face. "Tonight." Victoria disappeared into her office, and Daniel was left alone in the massive living room, a married man who'd spent a total of maybe 20 hours with his wife. He pulled out his phone and saw messages already flooding in. Coworkers who'd seen the announcement, distant relatives who hadn't spoken to him in years, even a text from Mrs. Chen with a string of shocked emojis. He ignored them all and focused on the one message that mattered, the one he'd prepared earlier. "Lily, I have something exciting to tell you when I pick you up. Love, Dad." That afternoon, Daniel stood outside Lily's school and watched her run toward him with her backpack bouncing, her face lit with the uncomplicated joy of a child whose biggest concern was whether they'd have time for the playground. He caught her in a hug and tried to memorize this moment before everything changed again. "Did you have a good day?" "We learned about fractions." Lily grabbed his hand as they walked toward the waiting car. "I don't really get it, but Miss Wilson said I did good." "Did well," Daniel corrected automatically. "That's what I said." Lily climbed into the car, and her eyes went wide at the leather seats and the driver. "Whoa, is this Miss Victoria's car?" "It's ours now. We can use it whenever we need." Daniel buckled her in. "How would you feel about pizza for dinner? And a movie?" "Really? On a school night?" "Really. I want to talk to you about something, and I thought we could make it special." Lily's expression grew cautious. "Are we in trouble?" "No, Bug. Nothing bad. I promise." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Just some changes. Good changes." They picked up pizza and headed back to the penthouse, where Victoria was already waiting. She'd changed out of her wedding suit into casual clothes, and she'd set the dining table with plates and napkins like they were a normal family having a normal dinner. Lily ran to show her the fraction worksheet, and Victoria listened with the same focused attention she probably brought to million-dollar campaigns. They ate pizza and talked about school and butterflies, and for a moment, Daniel could almost pretend this was real. Then Victoria caught his eye and nodded. Time to tell her. "Lily," Daniel started, his heart hammering. "You know how I told you Miss Victoria and I have been spending time together?" "Uh-huh." Lily took another bite of pizza, unconcerned. "Well, we've been spending a lot of time together, and we've gotten really close. And Daniel looked at Victoria, who gave him an encouraging nod. "We decided we want to be a family. So today, Miss Victoria and I got married." Lily stopped chewing. Her eyes went wide, flicking between them. "Married? Like married? "Like married, Pete," Victoria confirmed gently. "Which means we all get to live here together now, as a family." "But," Lily's voice was small, "you didn't tell me. You didn't even ask if it was okay." The hurt in her voice cut Daniel to the bone. "I know, Bug, and I'm sorry. It happened kind of fast, but I wanted to make sure you were happy first, which is why we had you stay here, so you could see if you liked it." "I liked the room." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "But you got married without me. I wasn't even there." "You're right." Victoria spoke before Daniel could. "That wasn't fair to you, Lily. We should have included you. That was my fault. I was so focused on getting everything arranged that I didn't think about how you'd feel." The apology seemed to surprise Lily as much as it surprised Daniel. "You're not mad I'm upset?" "Why would I be mad?" Victoria moved to sit beside Lily. "Your feelings matter. If you're upset, you're allowed to be upset. We made a decision that affects you without talking to you first. That wasn't right." Lily sniffled, tears rolling down her cheeks. I just, what if you decide you don't like me? What if you send us away? Oh, sweetheart, Daniel pulled Lily into his lap. That's not going to happen. I promise you, no one is sending anyone away. Your dad's right. Victoria's voice was soft. Lily, I chose to marry your father, and I chose to have you be part of this family. That's not something I take lightly. You're stuck with me now. Really? Really? Victoria reached out and wiped a tear from Lily's cheek. And if you want to have a party to celebrate, we can do that. With your friends from school, with your dad's friends, with anyone you want. Would that help? Lily nodded, still hiccuping with tears. Can we have a cake? The biggest cake you want. And can I call you? Lily hesitated. I don't know what to call you. Victoria glanced at Daniel before responding. What do you want to call me? I don't know. Not Mom because my mom died, but Miss Victoria sounds weird now. How about just Victoria? Victoria suggested. That's my name. You can use it. Okay. Lily wiped her eyes. Victoria, and Daddy, and me. That's our family now? That's our family. Daniel held her close, feeling the weight of the lie pressed down on him even as he said it. The rest of the evening passed in a strange kind of normalcy. They watched a movie together, Lily curled between them on the couch. Victoria made popcorn and didn't complain when Lily spilled some on the pristine cushions. When bedtime came, Lily asked if Victoria would help with her bedtime story, and Daniel watched his new wife stumble through a picture book with surprising patience. You're really staying? Lily asked as Victoria tucked her in. You're not going to leave? I'm really staying. Victoria smoothed Lily's hair back. Sleep well, Lily. Tomorrow we can start planning that party. Lily's eyes were already drooping. Okay. Night, Victoria. Night, Daddy. Night, Bug. Daniel kissed her forehead and followed Victoria out into the hallway. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of what they'd just done settling between them. Daniel had just told his daughter that their fake marriage was real, had just promised her stability that existed only on paper. She took it better than I expected, Victoria said finally. She's 6. She wants to believe everything's going to be okay. Daniel's voice was rough, but she's going to remember this. When it ends, she's going to remember we lied to her. Then we make sure these 12 months are good enough that it matters more than how they end. Victoria turned to face him. I meant what I said, Daniel. I'm not going to hurt her, and I'm not going to abandon her. Whatever happens when this contract expires, we'll handle it in a way that protects Lily. You say that now. I say it because I mean it. Victoria's eyes flashed with something fierce. I don't make promises I can't keep. To anyone. Daniel wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that this impossible woman with her contracts and her calculations actually cared about his daughter's well-being. But trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. I'm going to hold you to that, he said quietly. Good. You should. Victoria glanced toward her office. I have work to finish. You're welcome to use the media room, the library, whatever you need. This is your home now. She left him standing in the hallway, and Daniel realized with a start that she was right. This was his home, their home. For the next 12 months, this penthouse was where he lived, where Lily would grow up, where he and Victoria would play house for an audience of family and friends and colleagues. Daniel walked through the quiet apartment, taking inventory. 3 bedrooms, 2 offices, a kitchen he barely knew how to use, a living room bigger than their entire old apartment. Everything perfect, everything pristine, everything wrong. He ended up in the master bedroom, his and Victoria's room, though she was still working and showed no signs of coming to bed. The space was divided subtly, his things on one side, hers on the other. 2 people occupying the same space but maintaining careful distance. Daniel changed into pajamas and lay in the too-big bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering what Emily would think if she could see him now. Would she understand? Would she be angry that he'd married someone else, even if it was just on paper? Would she forgive him for using their daughter as part of this elaborate charade? He'd never know. And maybe that was for the best. Daniel was almost asleep when he heard the bedroom door open. Victoria moved quietly through the darkness, heading toward the bathroom. He heard water running, the soft sounds of her nighttime routine. When she emerged and climbed into the other side of the bed, she stayed as far from him as possible. Thank you, she said into the darkness. For tonight, with Lily. You handled that well. I lied to my daughter about loving you. You told her we're a family. That's not entirely a lie. Victoria shifted, and Daniel could feel her weight on the mattress. We are a family now, Daniel, just not the traditional kind. What are we then? Victoria was quiet for so long that Daniel thought she might have fallen asleep. Then, we're two people trying to survive in a world that doesn't make it easy, and we're doing it together. Maybe that's family enough. Daniel didn't have an answer for that. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, hyper-aware of the stranger sharing his bed, the ring on his finger, the daughter sleeping down the hall who believed in happy endings. Tomorrow they'd wake up as a married couple. Tomorrow they'd start the performance in earnest. Tomorrow Victoria would go to work and Daniel would take Lily to school, and they'd all pretend this was normal. And maybe, Daniel thought, as sleep finally claimed him, if they pretended long enough, some part of it would become true. 3 weeks into their marriage, Daniel discovered that Victoria hummed while she made coffee. It was barely dawn, the city still draped in that peculiar blue darkness before sunrise. Daniel had padded into the kitchen for water and found her there, standing by the expensive espresso machine in silk pajamas, humming something classical under her breath while she waited for the brew cycle to finish. She hadn't noticed him yet, and Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, watching this unguarded version of his wife exist in the quiet. Then she turned and saw him, and the humming stopped. The walls came back up. "Did I wake you?" Her voice was polite, distant, the same tone she used in business meetings. "No, just thirsty." Daniel crossed to the refrigerator, hyper-aware of the space between them. 3 weeks of living together, and they still moved around each other like dancers who hadn't learned the steps. Victoria poured her coffee, added exactly 1 sugar, no cream. Daniel had learned her patterns. Up at 5:30, workout by 6, shower by 7, out the door by 8. She ran her life with military precision, and Daniel and Lily had simply been absorbed into the routine like new variables in an equation. "Lily has a field trip today," Daniel said, filling his glass. "I'm chaperoning." "The Science Museum." Victoria nodded. "She mentioned it at dinner last night. She's excited about the planetarium." The fact that Victoria remembered shouldn't have surprised him. She remembered everything: Lily's favorite cereal, the name of her best friend at school, which stuffed animal she slept with each night. Victoria approached parenting the way she approached campaigns, gathering data and deploying it strategically. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. Lily had adjusted to their new life with the resilience of childhood. She loved her new school, loved her new room, loved having Victoria help with homework at the kitchen counter while Daniel made dinner. If she noticed the careful distance her father and Victoria maintained, she never mentioned it. Maybe she thought all marriages looked like this: polite and civil and utterly lacking in spontaneity. "I should go," Victoria said, rinsing her cup. "Early meeting." She left without saying goodbye, and Daniel stood alone in the kitchen watching the sunrise paint Denver in shades of gold. This was their life now. Cordial roommates raising a child together, sleeping in the same bed but maintaining separate orbits. It should have been comfortable. Instead, it felt like living in a museum, beautiful and cold and not quite real. The announcement of their marriage had caused exactly the stir Victoria predicted. The industry blogs had covered it. The society pages had speculated about it, and Victoria's mother had called within an hour of the press release demanding a family dinner. That dinner was scheduled for Saturday night, and Daniel's stomach churned every time he thought about it. "Daddy!" Lily burst into the kitchen, already dressed in her field trip outfit, jeans and her favorite butterfly shirt. "Is it time to go yet?" "Not yet, Bug. We've got an hour." Daniel started pulling out breakfast supplies. "Pancakes?" "Yes, can I help?" They fell into the easy rhythm of cooking together, Lily measuring flour while Daniel cracked eggs. This part felt real. This part felt like family. It was everything else that felt like acting. The field trip was chaos in the best way. 26-year-olds hopped up on excitement, running between exhibits while harried teachers tried to maintain order. Daniel shadowed Lily and her group, listening to her explain the solar system to her friend Emma with complete authority. "And Pluto isn't really a planet anymore," Lily said seriously. "Victoria told me. She said it's a dwarf planet now, which is sad but also kind of cool." "Your stepmom knows a lot," Emma said, and Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Stepmom. When had that happened? When had Lily started calling Victoria that to her friends? He didn't have time to process it because his phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "How's the field trip?" Daniel snapped a picture of Lily standing in front of a massive dinosaur skeleton, her arms spread wide in excitement. She's having the time of her life. Victoria's response came seconds later. "Good. I cleared my afternoon. Thought I might pick her up from school, unless you'd prefer to." Daniel stared at the message, trying to decode it. Victoria rarely left work early. Her calendar was sacred, every minute accounted for. "You sure?" "I'm sure. See you at home." Home! The words still felt strange coming from Victoria. That afternoon, Daniel returned to the penthouse to find Lily and Victoria in the media room, watching a nature documentary about butterflies. Lily was curled against Victoria's side, her head resting on Victoria's shoulder, completely at ease. Victoria's arm was around her, and she was explaining something about monarch migration patterns with the same intensity she brought to client presentations. They looked like a real mother and daughter. The thought knocked the air from Daniel's lungs. "Daddy!" Lily spotted him and bounced up. "Did you know butterflies can fly thousands of miles? Thousands!" "I did not know that." Daniel forced a smile. "That's amazing, Bug." Victoria was just telling me about when she saw them in Mexico. She went there for work once, and there were so many butterflies the trees looked orange. Daniel's eyes met Victoria's over Lily's head. She looked almost embarrassed, caught in a moment of genuine connection. "It was remarkable," Victoria said simply. "I've never seen anything like it." "Can we go see them sometime?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with hope. "All three of us?" The question hung in the air. Daniel knew what he should say, that yes, of course they could go, that they were a family and families took trips together. But the words stuck in his throat because he didn't know if they'd still be a family when monarch season came around again. "Maybe," Victoria said, rescuing him, "if we can all get time off work and school. It's a long trip." "But maybe," Lily pressed. "Maybe." Victoria's voice was gentle. "Now, go wash up for dinner. It's your night to set the table, remember?" Lily groaned good-naturedly and headed toward her room. The moment she was gone, the easy warmth between Victoria and Daniel evaporated like morning mist. "You didn't have to come home early," Daniel said. "I wanted to." Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt with precise movements. "She talks about these field trips for days. I thought she might want to share. And you just happened to have the afternoon free. I moved things." Victoria's tone was defensive now. "Is that a problem?" "No, I just—" Daniel ran his hand through his hair. "I don't know what we're doing here, Victoria. With her. This is starting to feel like more than an arrangement." "It is more than an arrangement. It's her life." Victoria's eyes flashed. "What did you think would happen, Daniel? That I'd ignore her? That we'd maintain perfect emotional distance while living in the same house? I thought we'd maintain some boundaries." "We have boundaries. We sleep on opposite sides of the bed. We don't talk about our feelings. We definitely don't touch unless someone's watching." Victoria's voice was sharp enough to cut. "But Lily needs more than that. She needs to believe this is real. Which means I need to show up. I need to care. And when it ends? When the year is up and we divorce? What happens to her then?" Victoria's expression shuddered. "We handle it. Like we agreed. That's not a plan. That's a hope. It's all I have." The admission seemed to surprise Victoria as much as it surprised Daniel. She took a breath, regaining her composure. "I'm doing the best I can with an impossible situation. If you have a better solution, I'm listening." Daniel didn't have a better solution. That was the problem. He just had growing dread that this arrangement they'd made was going to destroy more than it saved. "Dinner with my mother is Saturday," Victoria said, changing the subject. 6 o'clock. She's expecting us at her estate in Cherry Hills. Just us? Not Lily? I convinced her to wait on meeting Lily. She wasn't happy, but she agreed. Victoria moved toward her office. "Wear the navy suit. And Daniel? Whatever she says, whatever she implies, we present a united front. She's looking for cracks. Don't give her any." The warning settled like lead in Daniel's stomach. Saturday arrived too quickly. Daniel dressed in the navy suit, adjusted his tie for the third time, and tried not to feel like he was preparing for battle. Victoria emerged from the bathroom in a burgundy dress that probably cost more than his old car, her makeup flawless, her armor perfectly in place. "Ready?" she asked. "Not even remotely." "Good. Honesty." Victoria's lips quirked into something that might have been a smile. "My mother will eat you alive if you try to charm her. Just be yourself. Quiet, competent, devoted to Lily. She'll respect that more than empty flattery." They took Victoria's car driving south toward Cherry Hills, where Denver's old money lived, behind gates and careful landscaping. Victoria's childhood home was a sprawling estate that made the penthouse look modest, all stone and glass and manicured gardens. "Your mother lives here alone?" Daniel asked as they pulled up the circular drive. "With staff, yes. My father died 5 years ago. She rattles around in here like a ghost." Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. "My brother Marcus lives in the guest house. You'll meet him tonight, too." "I didn't know you had a brother." "Half-brother, technically. My father's son from his first marriage. Marcus is 42, never married, works in consulting, which means he lives off the family money, and occasionally shows up to board meetings." Victoria's tone dripped with disdain. "He's going to hate you on principle." "Because I married his sister?" "Because you married his sister before he could convince her to marry someone who'd give him more access to the company." Victoria pulled to a stop. "Marcus has been trying to position himself as heir apparent since our father died. My marriage threatens that. Be prepared." The front door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman who could only be Victoria's mother. She was tall and elegant in a way that spoke of generations of breeding, her silver hair styled perfectly, her posture impeccable. She studied Daniel with eyes the same green as her daughter's, sharp and assessing. "Victoria, you're late." "We're 5 minutes early, Mother." "I said 5:30. It's 5:25. The older woman's gaze shifted to Daniel. "So you're the copywriter?" Not her son-in-law. Not Daniel. "The copywriter." He extended his hand. "Daniel Harper, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you." She took his hand briefly, her grip firm. "Eleanor Hale. Come in. Dinner will be ready shortly." The interior of the house was exactly what Daniel expected. Antiques and oil paintings and rooms designed to intimidate. Eleanor led them to a sitting room where a man waited with a drink already in his hand. Marcus Hale looked nothing like Victoria. Where she was sharp angles and controlled energy, he was soft and dissolute, his expensive suit not quite hiding a paunch. His eyes, when they landed on Daniel, were cold. "The happy couple," Marcus said, raising his glass. "Congratulations on your sudden nuptials. Very romantic, I'm sure." "Marcus," Victoria's voice carried a warning. "What? I'm being sincere." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though I have to say, sis, this is fast even for you. 6 months of secret dating and suddenly you're married? Makes a person wonder what the rush was." "Love doesn't operate on a timeline, Marcus." Victoria moved to the bar, pouring herself wine with steady hands. "Daniel, scotch?" "Just water, thanks." "Water," Marcus laughed. "A teetotaler. How refreshing. Tell me, Daniel, what exactly do you do at Sterling and Associates, besides marry the boss?" "I'm a copywriter in the creative department." Daniel kept his voice even. "I work on campaigns for our tech sector clients, primarily." "Fascinating. And how did you two meet? Let me guess. Over a particularly riveting discussion of font choices?" "Marcus, that's enough." Eleanor's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Sit down. All of you. We're having a civilized dinner, not an interrogation." Dinner was served in a formal dining room that could have seated 20. The 4 of them clustered at one end of the massive table, and Daniel felt like he was being studied under a microscope. Eleanor asked pointed questions about his background, his family, his education. Marcus interjected with barbed comments disguised as jokes. Victoria sat beside Daniel, her hand occasionally finding his under the table in a gesture that was probably meant to be comforting but felt more like a warning. "So you have a daughter," Eleanor said over the main course. "How old?" 6. Her name is Lily." "And her mother?" "Died 2 years ago. Car accident." Daniel's throat tightened around the words. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss. It must be difficult, raising a child alone." "It was. It is." Daniel glanced at Victoria. "But I'm not alone anymore." "No, I suppose you're not. Eleanor set down her fork. Victoria tells me you've moved into her penthouse. That's quite a change for a young child. Lily's adjusting well. She loves her new school, her new room. Victoria's been wonderful with her. Has she? Eleanor's gaze shifted to her daughter. That's unexpected. You've never struck me as particularly maternal, Victoria. People can surprise you, Mother. Victoria's voice was tight. Indeed they can. Eleanor sipped her wine. Though I have to say this entire situation surprises me. You've spent years insisting you didn't have time for relationships, and suddenly you're married with a ready-made family. Forgive a mother's skepticism. There's nothing to be skeptical about, Victoria said. I met Daniel. We connected. Things progressed naturally. Naturally. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Remind me, when exactly did you two start dating? The press release was vague on details. Victoria didn't miss a beat. 8 months ago. We kept it quiet to avoid office complications. 8 months. Marcus's smile was predatory. And in all that time you never mentioned him. Not once. Not to Mother, not to me, not to anyone on the board. My personal life is personal, Marcus. Is it? Or is this whole thing a convenient arrangement? Marcus set down his glass with deliberate care. Come on, Victoria. You're asking us to believe that you, the woman who schedules bathroom breaks, fell madly in love and eloped within months. It's absurd. That's enough. Daniel's voice cut across the table, surprising everyone, including himself. I understand you're protective of your sister. That's admirable. But questioning the validity of our marriage is insulting, to both of us. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Touched a nerve, did I? You crossed a line. Daniel met his eyes steadily. Victoria and I didn't elope. We had a private ceremony because we wanted something intimate and meaningful. We didn't need a circus to prove our commitment to each other. Well said, Eleanor murmured. Marcus, apologize. For what? Asking reasonable questions? For being intentionally cruel. Eleanor's tone brooked no argument. Apologize, now. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he turned to Victoria and Daniel with a smile that was all teeth. My apologies. I'm sure your marriage is exactly what it appears to be. The words dripped with sarcasm, but Eleanor seemed satisfied. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation, and Daniel counted down the minutes until they could escape. Finally, Eleanor stood. Coffee in the library. Marcus, go check on the guest house. I smelled smoke earlier. You'd better not be smoking those cigars inside again. Marcus left with obvious reluctance, and Eleanor led Victoria and Daniel to a library lined with leather-bound books. She poured coffee from a silver service and settled into a wing chair with the air of someone preparing for serious business. Now that my son is gone, we can speak frankly. Eleanor looked between them. Marcus is right to be suspicious. This marriage is convenient timing, Victoria. Very convenient, given the board's concerns about your personal life affecting your professional judgment. Mother, let me finish. Eleanor raised a hand. I don't particularly care whether you married for love or for strategy. Your father married me for connections, and we had 43 perfectly adequate years together. What I care about is whether you can maintain this arrangement well enough to satisfy the board and keep Sterling and Associates stable. Daniel felt Victoria tense beside him. So you know, she said quietly. I know you've spent your entire life calculating every move. I know you're brilliant and ruthless and deeply afraid of losing control. Eleanor's voice was almost kind. And I know that marrying someone who needs you was exactly the kind of strategic choice you'd make. That's not, Victoria started, but Eleanor continued as if she hadn't spoken. The question is whether Mr. Harper here understands what he's gotten himself into. Whether he can play this role convincingly enough, long enough, to satisfy the vultures circling my company. Daniel set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. With respect, Mrs. Hale, I'm not playing a role. I married Victoria. I moved my daughter into her home. I'm building a life with her. Whether that started from strategy or desperation or convenience doesn't change the fact that it's real now. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. You're a better liar than I expected. Or perhaps you're not lying at all. Perhaps you've convinced yourself this arrangement is genuine. Perhaps it is genuine, Daniel said. Perhaps two people can start from practicality and end up somewhere else entirely. An optimist. How refreshing. Eleanor stood, signaling the conversation was over. Very well. I'll inform the board that I've met with you both and found your marriage satisfactory. That should buy Victoria some time to prove herself indispensable. Thank you, Mother. Victoria's voice was strained. Don't thank me yet. Marcus isn't going to let this go. He smells blood in the water, and he's never been one to back down from a fight. Eleanor walked them to the door. Watch your backs, both of you. The drive home was silent. Daniel could feel tension radiating off Victoria in waves, but he didn't know how to address it. What did you say to your fake wife after her family essentially confirmed they knew the marriage was staged? I'm sorry, Victoria said finally as they pulled into the building's garage. About Marcus, about all of it. Your mother called me a good liar. She called you convincing. There's a difference. Victoria killed the engine but didn't move to get out. You were good tonight. The way you stood up to Marcus. The way you talked about our marriage. I almost believed it myself. Maybe you should believe it. The words came out before Daniel could stop them. Maybe this is more real than either of us wants to admit. Victoria turned to look at him, her face shadowed in the dim garage light. What are you saying? I'm saying we live together. We sleep in the same bed. We're raising a child together. At what point does the performance become the reality? It doesn't. Victoria's voice was firm. We have a contract, Daniel. An end date. Let's not confuse practical cohabitation with actual intimacy. Right, because you're so good at maintaining distance. Daniel couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. That's why you came home early to watch butterfly documentaries with Lily. That's why you remembered her field trip. That's why I what? Victoria's eyes flashed. Care about her? I told you I would. I told you I'd protect her. That doesn't mean I'm falling in love with her father. I never said you were. But you're implying it. Victoria's hands gripped the steering wheel. We can't do this, Daniel. We can't start blurring lines and catching feelings because it makes the performance easier. That's how people get hurt. People are already going to get hurt, Daniel's voice rose. Lily is already calling you her stepmom to her friends. She's already planning family vacations and asking when we can go see the butterflies. How do you think she's going to feel when this ends? We'll handle it. Stop saying that. Daniel slammed his hand against the dashboard. That's not a plan. That's just avoiding the inevitable disaster we're creating. The car fell silent except for their ragged breathing. Victoria stared straight ahead, her jaw tight, her walls firmly back in place. You're right, she said finally, her voice carefully controlled. We need a better exit strategy. We need to prepare Lily for the possibility that this might not last forever. How do we do that without breaking her heart now? I don't know. Victoria's admission was barely a whisper. I don't know how to do any of this, Daniel. I'm good at business. I'm good at campaigns and contracts and measured risks. But this, parenting and marriage and feelings, I don't have a template for this. The vulnerability in her voice cracked something in Daniel's chest. He reached over and took her hand, and she didn't pull away. Then we figure it out together, he said quietly. No more pretending we have all the answers. We just try to do right by Lily, whatever that looks like. Victoria's fingers tightened around his. What if we can't? Then we fail together instead of separately. That's what marriage is, right? Even fake ones. Victoria let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. This is not what I planned. Plans change. They sat there in the dim garage, hands clasped, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Victoria pulled away and opened her door. We should go up. The babysitter's probably wondering where we are. They rode the elevator in silence, and when they entered the penthouse, the sitter reported that Lily had been an angel and was sound asleep. Victoria paid her, and then they were alone in the quiet apartment. I'm going to check on Lily, Daniel said. I'll be in the office. I have work. They split apart like they always did, retreating to separate corners. But when Daniel looked in on his sleeping daughter and saw the drawing she'd made, 3 stick figures labeled Daddy, Victoria, and me standing in front of a house, he felt the full weight of what they were doing crash over him. This little girl believed in them, believed they were a family, and in 9 months they'd have to destroy that belief. Daniel found Victoria in her office, staring at her computer screen without actually seeing it. He knocked on the doorframe, and she looked up with tired eyes. She drew a picture of us, he said. The 3 of us. She labeled it My Family. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. Daniel, we're in too deep. He stepped into the office. We're both in too deep, and I don't know how to get out without destroying her. So what do you suggest? Victoria's voice was hollow. We stay married forever? We turn this arrangement into a real relationship to avoid disappointing a 6-year-old? Maybe. The word hung between them. Or maybe we stop counting down to the end date and just see what happens. That's not the deal we made. Deals change. You said it yourself. This is more than we planned for. Daniel moved closer. I'm not saying I'm in love with you, Victoria. I'm not saying this is some fairy tale, but I am saying that we're building something here, something that might be worth more than the original agreement. Victoria stood, her arms wrapped around herself. You're asking me to risk everything on a maybe, on the hope that what we're faking might become real. I'm asking you to consider that it already is real, just not in the way either of us expected. They stood there in her office, the city glittering below them through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the contract that had started everything sitting in a file somewhere nearby. Daniel could see the war happening behind Victoria's eyes, the careful planner versus the woman who'd hummed while making coffee, the executive versus the person who'd spent an afternoon explaining butterflies to a 6-year-old. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said finally. I don't know how to be real. Neither do I. Daniel reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the first truly intimate gesture he'd made that wasn't for an audience. But maybe we figure it out together. Victoria's breath caught. For a moment, Daniel thought she might close the distance between them, might kiss him like she meant it instead of like it was performance. But then her phone rang, shattering the moment. She stepped back, answering it with her professional voice. Victoria Hale. Whatever was said on the other end made her face go pale. When? How did he? Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and turned to Daniel, and he could see fear in her eyes for the first time since he'd known her. That was security at my office. Someone tried to break into my files. They got past the first firewall before being detected. Who would? Marcus. Victoria was already grabbing her bag. It has to be Marcus. He's looking for proof that our marriage is fake. Looking for the contract. The contract's here, not at your office. But my research on you is there. The background checks, the financial investigation, all of it. Victoria's hands shook as she gathered her things. If he finds that, he can piece together exactly what this is, and he'll use it to destroy me. Daniel's mind raced. What do we do? I go to the office. I lock down everything I can. You stay here with Lily. Victoria headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Daniel, if Marcus proves this marriage is fraudulent, if he exposes us, it's not just my career that's over. You could face charges, fraud, conspiracy, immigration violations if they want to get creative. I'm a citizen, Victoria. We both are. They'll find something. They always do when they want to hurt you. Victoria's voice broke slightly. I never should have involved you in this. Never should have put you and Lily at risk. We chose this, both of us. Daniel crossed to her. And we'll deal with whatever comes. Together. Victoria looked up at him, and for just a moment, her careful mask fell away completely. I can't lose this, Daniel. The company is all I have. No, it's not. He cupped her face gently. You have us. Whatever happens with Sterling and Associates, you have us. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her, because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, without either of them noticing, they'd stopped being strangers playing house and become something else entirely. Victoria left for the office, and Daniel stood alone in the penthouse, wondering if they'd just declared war on her brother, or if the war had been happening all along and they were only just now realizing it. He checked on Lily one more time, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware that the family she'd drawn might be unraveling before it had truly formed. Then he went to the master bedroom and found the contract in Victoria's desk drawer. The terms were all there in black and white. 1 year, financial compensation, clean divorce at the end. It all seemed so simple when it was just words on paper. But people weren't simple. Families weren't simple. And love, whatever was growing between them, whether it was real or convenient or some complicated mixture of both, was the least simple thing of all. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Files are secure, coming home. Home. She'd called the penthouse home without even thinking about it. Daniel put the contract back in the drawer and waited for his wife to come back. Whatever Marcus was planning, whatever exposure they were facing, they'd handle it together. Because that's what families did. Even the ones that started as business arrangements. Victoria returned just after midnight, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with a rhythm that spoke of exhaustion. Daniel had been sitting in the living room, unable to sleep, nursing a glass of water and watching the city lights blur through the windows. When she appeared, her makeup was smudged, her hair falling loose from its usual perfect style, and she looked more human than he'd ever seen her. "Did you find anything?" Daniel asked. Victoria dropped her bag on the counter and kicked off her shoes. Marcus covered his tracks well. The break-in attempt was sophisticated, someone who knew our systems. But he left a digital signature, probably intentionally. He wants me to know he's coming for me. What was he looking for? Anything he could weaponize. Victoria poured herself wine with shaking hands. The files he accessed were mostly benign, campaign proposals, client communications. But he was searching for personal folders, looking for you. Did he find the research? No, I moved it months ago when I first started planning this. Victoria drank half the glass in one swallow. But he knows something's there. He just hasn't found it yet. Daniel stood and crossed to her, taking the wine glass before she could finish it. You need sleep, not alcohol. I need to think. I need to plan. Victoria tried to take the glass back, but Daniel held it out of reach. Daniel, I'm serious. Marcus is going to the board. I can feel it. He's going to demand an investigation into our marriage, into our finances, into everything. Then let him investigate. We're married. Legally, officially married. What can he actually prove? He doesn't need proof. He just needs reasonable doubt. Victoria's voice cracked. The board is already skeptical of me. Half of them think a woman has no place running a creative agency. If Marcus plants enough questions, enough suspicions, they'll force me out regardless of evidence. So we get ahead of it. Daniel set the glass down and took Victoria's hands. We go to the board first. We control the narrative. And say what? That yes, our marriage started as a contract, but now we're really in love? Victoria laughed bitterly. They'll never believe it. Why not? Daniel challenged. It's the truth, isn't it? The words hung between them like a held breath. Victoria stared at him, her green eyes wide with something that looked like fear. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere in the last month, this stopped being fake for me. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. I'm saying I wake up and listen for your humming in the kitchen. I'm saying I look forward to dinner conversations about Lily's Day. I'm saying when you came home tonight, my first thought wasn't about the company or the contract. It was about whether you were okay. Daniel, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm just saying that if we have to stand in front of a board and defend our marriage, I won't be lying when I tell them it's real. Victoria pulled her hands free, wrapping her arms around herself. You can't mean that. This was supposed to be simple, transactional. People aren't transactions, Victoria. You know that. Daniel stepped closer. You know it every time you help Lily with her homework. Every time you remember her favorite breakfast. Every time you look at that butterfly drawing on the refrigerator like it's the most valuable thing you own. Stop. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Please stop. Why? Because it scares you? Because it's easier to keep pretending this is just business? Because if it's real, I can lose it. Victoria's voice broke on the words, tears spilling down her cheeks. If it's just a contract, I know exactly what I'm losing when it ends. But if it's real, if you're real and Lily's real and this family is real, then I have everything to lose. And I don't know how to survive that. The raw honesty of it stole Daniel's breath. He'd seen Victoria command boardrooms, dismantle competitors, build empires with nothing but her brilliant mind. But he'd never seen her vulnerable like this, stripped of every defense. Then don't lose it, he said softly. Choose to keep it. It's not that simple, it's exactly that simple. Daniel cupped her face, making her look at him. The contract has an end date, but we don't have to honor it. We can choose differently. We can choose this. Victoria searched his face, and Daniel could see the war happening behind her eyes. Every instinct she had was telling her to run, to protect herself, to maintain control. But something else was there too. Hope, fragile and terrifying. Before she could respond, a sound came from down the hall. Lily's door opening, small footsteps on hardwood. They broke apart as Lily appeared in the living room doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes still heavy with sleep. I heard voices. Are you fighting? No, sweetheart, Victoria said quickly, wiping her eyes. We're just talking. What are you doing up? Bad dream, Lily patted over to them. About butterflies getting lost and not finding their way home. Daniel's heart clenched. Even in sleep, Lily was processing the instability she sensed but couldn't name. He scooped her up and she wrapped her arms around his neck. Butterflies always find their way home, Victoria said, moving closer. They have built-in compasses. They always know where they belong. Really? Lily looked at Victoria with trusting eyes. Really? Even if they get blown off course or confused, they remember the way back. Victoria reached out and smoothed Lily's sleep-tangled hair. And they always travel together. They protect each other. Lily seemed to consider this. Like families? Exactly like families. Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. Can I sleep with you guys? Lily asked. Just for tonight? Daniel glanced at Victoria, expecting hesitation. Instead, she nodded immediately. Of course you can. Come on. They settled into the master bedroom, Lily between them in the big bed. She fell asleep almost immediately, her hand clutching Daniel's shirt, her head resting against Victoria's shoulder. And Daniel lay there in the darkness, listening to his daughter breathe and feeling Victoria's careful stillness on the other side, knowing that everything had just changed. When morning came, Daniel woke to find Victoria already up, standing by the window in her robe, watching the sunrise paint Denver in shades of gold. Lily was still asleep, curled into the space Victoria had vacated. Hey, Daniel said quietly. Victoria turned and her expression was unreadable. We need to talk about what I said last night. What you said. Okay. I meant it. The admission seemed to cost her. About being scared. About not knowing how to do this. I know. But I also... Victoria took a breath. I also can't stop thinking about what you said. About choosing to keep this. And I wonder if maybe you're right. Maybe we've already made the choice, we just haven't acknowledged it. Hope bloomed in Daniel's chest. What are you saying? I'm saying that when I thought about losing you and Lily last night, it felt like dying. And I've spent my whole life avoiding vulnerability, avoiding dependence on anyone or anything I couldn't control. But you and Lily... Victoria's voice caught. You've already gotten past every defense I have. So maybe the question isn't whether I want this to be real. Maybe it's whether I'm brave enough to admit it already is. Daniel got out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Lily. He crossed to Victoria and took her hands. You're the bravest person I know. You built an empire from nothing. You stood up to your entire family. You took in a broken single father and his daughter when any sane person would have run. That wasn't bravery. That was desperation. It was both. And it was also the best decision either of us ever made. Daniel pulled her closer. I'm not asking you to have all the answers, Victoria. I'm just asking you to stop running from this. From us. Victoria looked up at him, and something in her expression shifted. What if Marcus exposes the contract? What if everyone finds out this started as a transaction? Then we tell them the truth, that it started as business and became something else. The people are allowed to change their minds about what they want. Daniel's thumbs traced circles on her wrists. We face it together. Together, Victoria repeated, like she was testing the word. Then before Daniel could respond, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't like their wedding kiss, brief and performative. This was real and desperate and full of everything they'd been avoiding for weeks. Daniel's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Victoria's hands fisted in his shirt like she was afraid he might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I don't know how to do this. How to be someone's partner for real. Neither do I. We'll figure it out. What if I mess it up? What if I hurt you or Lily or... Then we deal with it. Daniel kissed her again, softer this time. That's what real relationships are, Victoria. Messy and complicated and worth it anyway. From the bed, Lily's sleepy voice interrupted them. Are you guys kissing? They broke apart to find her sitting up, rubbing her eyes, a smile spreading across her face. You are! You're kissing like in movies! Victoria laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. Maybe a little. Does this mean you really love each other? Like real love? Lily's eyes were bright with hope. Daniel looked at Victoria, giving her the chance to answer. She crossed to the bed and sat beside Lily, taking the little girl's hands. I think it does, Victoria said carefully. I know this has been confusing. All the changes, moving here, everything happening so fast. But yes, Lily, I love your dad, and I love you. Lily launched herself at Victoria, wrapping small arms around her neck. I love you too. Can I call you Mom now, or is that weird? Victoria's eyes met Daniel's over Lily's head, swimming with tears. You can call me whatever feels right to you. I think Mom feels right. Lily pulled back, her face serious. Not instead of my first mom, but like an extra mom. Is that okay? That's more than okay. Victoria's voice shook. That's perfect. Daniel joined them on the bed, and they sat there in a tangle of limbs and emotions. This family that had started as a contract and somehow become the most real thing any of them had ever had. The moment was shattered by Victoria's phone ringing. She glanced at the screen and her expression hardened. It's my lawyer. I need to take this. She stepped into the hallway, and Daniel heard the sharp edge return to her voice. When she came back, her face was pale. Marcus filed a formal complaint with the board. He's claiming our marriage is fraudulent and demanding an emergency meeting to remove me as creative director. When? Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Victoria sat heavily on the bed. He's also requesting a full audit of my personal finances and access to all my private files. Can he do that? If the board agrees he has cause, yes. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. And he's apparently found something, some evidence he claims proves our marriage is staged. Daniel's blood ran cold. The contract? I don't see how. It's locked in my safe here. No one has access except me. Victoria's mind was clearly racing. But he has something. My lawyer says he's confident, prepared. This isn't a fishing expedition. Maybe he found the research files, the background check on me. Those wouldn't prove fraud. They just prove due diligence. Victoria stood and started pacing. No, this is something else. Something concrete enough that he thinks he can destroy me with it. Then we get our own evidence. Proof that this marriage is real. Victoria laughed bitterly. What proof? Photos of us sleeping in the same bed? Testimony from Lily that we kiss sometimes? Marcus will just say we're maintaining appearances. What about the truth? Daniel stood to face her. What if we just tell the board everything? How we started, how it changed, all of it. That's insane. We'd be admitting to fraud. We'd be admitting to a marriage of convenience that evolved into something genuine. That's not illegal, Victoria. It's just unconventional. Victoria stared at him like he'd suggested they rob a bank. You want to walk into a boardroom full of conservative executives and tell them we started this marriage as a business transaction? I want to walk in there and tell them the truth, that you needed a husband, I needed financial stability, and we made an arrangement that benefited us both. Then I want to tell them that somewhere along the way, we fell in love. Actually, genuinely fell in love. Daniel took her hands. Let Marcus produce whatever evidence he has. We'll counter it with honesty. Honesty doesn't win in boardrooms, Daniel. Strategy does. Then we make honesty our strategy. Daniel pulled her closer. Think about it, Victoria. What's more believable? That we maintained a perfect facade for months without a single crack, or that two people in an unusual situation found something real? Which story sounds more human? Victoria's breath hitched. You're asking me to bet everything on the board having empathy. That's a terrible gamble. I'm asking you to bet on us. Daniel kissed her forehead. On the fact that what we have is strong enough to withstand scrutiny, that it's real enough to defend. From the doorway, Lily's small voice interrupted. Are you going away? Is someone trying to make you leave? They both turned to find her standing there, clutching her rabbit, tears streaming down her face. She must have heard more than they realized. Oh, sweetheart, no. Victoria crossed to her immediately, kneeling down. No one's making anyone leave. There's just some complicated grown-up stuff happening at my work. But that man, Marcus, he wants to hurt you. I heard you say it. Lily's voice broke. Is it because of us? Because Daddy married you? No, Lily, it's not. Victoria started, but Lily cut her off. I don't want you to go. I don't want this family to end. Lily was sobbing now, and Victoria gathered her close. It's not ending. I promise you, this family isn't ending. Victoria looked at Daniel over Lily's head, and he saw determination replacing the fear. Whatever happens tomorrow, we stay together. All three of us. Daniel joined them on the floor, wrapping his arms around both of them. We're a family, Bug. That doesn't change because of some meeting or some angry man, okay? Lily nodded against Victoria's shoulder, and they stayed like that until her tears subsided. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy but resolved. I can come with you tomorrow. I can tell them you're a good mom, that you help with homework and make good pancakes and know about butterflies. Victoria's laugh was wet with her own tears. That's very brave, but this is something the grown-ups need to handle. You have school tomorrow, remember? But I want to help. You do help, every single day. Victoria cupped Lily's face. You make this family real, Lily. You make it worth fighting for. After they'd settled Lily with breakfast and cartoons, Daniel and Victoria retreated to her office. She pulled out files, began making notes, preparing for battle with the same intensity she brought to every campaign. If we're doing this, if we're really going with honesty, then I need to brief my lawyer, Victoria said, typing rapidly. He'll think I've lost my mind. Maybe you have, maybe we both have. Daniel leaned against her desk. But I'd rather be honest and lose than lie and win. I've spent enough time hiding who I am, what I need. I'm done with that. Victoria looked up at him. Even if it means losing everything, the money, the security, all of it? I didn't marry you for money, Victoria. I married you for Lily's future, and her future is better with you in it, money or no money. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, like the last wall finally crumbling. I never wanted to need anyone. I spent my whole life making sure I never had to depend on anyone but myself. And how's that worked out for you? Terribly. Victoria's smile was rueful. I was successful and miserable and completely alone. Then you and Lily crashed into my carefully controlled life and ruined everything. You're welcome. I'm serious. Victoria stood and crossed to him. You ruined my plans, my strategies, my entire worldview. And somehow, impossibly, you made everything better. Daniel kissed her, pouring everything he felt into it. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling. Okay, we do this your way. We go in there tomorrow and tell the truth, all of it. She took a shaky breath. But Daniel, if this goes wrong, if the board votes against me and I lose the company, I need you to know something. What? It's worth it. You and Lily are worth more than Sterling and Associates ever was. The words hung in the air between them, a declaration that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. Daniel pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. We're going to be okay. Whatever happens, we're going to be okay. How can you be so sure? Because we're fighting for something real, and that's always worth it. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Victoria's lawyer arrived at noon, listened to their plan with increasing alarm, and finally agreed to support them despite his obvious reservations. They rehearsed their testimony, refined their approach, gathered every piece of documentation that showed their marriage was genuine. Photos of family dinners, Lily's school records showing Victoria as an emergency contact, joint bank account statements. That night, after Lily was asleep, they lay in bed together without pretense for the first time. Not on opposite sides, maintaining distance, but tangled together, Victoria's head on Daniel's chest, his arms around her. I'm terrified, she admitted into the darkness. Me too. What if they don't believe us? What if they think we're just better liars? Then we prove them wrong. We keep being a family, keep building this life, until even the skeptics can't deny it. Daniel's hand traced patterns on her back. Victoria, I need you to know something. What? Even if tomorrow goes badly, even if you lose Sterling and Associates, you haven't failed. You've built something better. You've built us. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I've never told anyone this, but when my father died, he told me the company was the only thing that would never leave me, that people would disappoint me, betray me, abandon me, but the business would always be there. He was wrong. I know that now. Victoria tilted her head to look at him. You and Lily proved that. You're the first people who've ever chosen to stay. Then trust us. Trust this. Daniel kissed her softly. Tomorrow, we walk into that boardroom as a united front, as a real family, and whatever happens, we walk out the same way. Victoria nodded against his chest. Together. Together. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time since this whole arrangement began, Daniel felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Morning arrived too quickly. Victoria was up at dawn, moving through her routine with mechanical precision. Daniel made breakfast while she dressed, choosing her armor carefully. A sharp black suit, her hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup. She looked every inch the executive preparing for war. "You look beautiful," Daniel said when she emerged. "I look intimidating. There's a difference." But Victoria smiled despite herself. "Thank you. For this. For everything." Lily appeared, still in pajamas, and wrapped herself around Victoria's legs. "Are you going to win today?" Victoria knelt down. "I'm going to try my hardest, and no matter what happens, I'm coming home to you, okay?" "Okay." Lily hugged her fiercely. "I love you, Mom." Victoria's breath caught on the word. She'd heard it before, but this time it felt weighted with everything that was at stake. "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." The car arrived at 1:30. Daniel had arranged for Mrs. Chen to pick up Lily from school, not wanting her anywhere near whatever chaos might unfold. Victoria gathered her files, squared her shoulders, and looked at Daniel. "Ready? Ready?" The Sterling and Associates building looked the same as always, glass and steel and money. But today it felt different, like walking into a courtroom for sentencing. They rode the elevator in silence, hands clasped, drawing strength from each other. The boardroom was on the top floor, a space Daniel had never seen before. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive table that could seat 20, leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. The board members were already assembled, 10 executives who controlled the fate of Victoria's career. Eleanor Hale sat at the head of the table, her expression neutral. Marcus sat beside her, a smile playing at his lips that made Daniel's blood boil. "Victoria, Mr. Harper, please sit." Eleanor gestured to 2 chairs positioned across from Marcus. "Let's begin." Victoria's lawyer entered and took a seat beside them. The board's attorney sat opposite, a stack of folders in front of him. "This emergency meeting has been called at the request of Marcus Hale," Eleanor began, her voice formal. "He has made serious allegations regarding Victoria's fitness to serve as creative director, specifically concerning the validity of her recent marriage." "Marcus, you have the floor." Marcus stood, and Daniel could see the predatory gleam in his eyes. This man had been waiting for this moment. "Thank you, Mother. Board members, I'll be brief. 3 months ago, my sister Victoria announced her marriage to Daniel Harper, a junior copywriter in our employ. This marriage came conveniently timed with the board's concerns about Victoria's personal stability affecting her professional judgment. He clicked a remote, and a presentation appeared on the screen behind him. "I've conducted an investigation into this marriage, and what I've found is disturbing. Mr. Harper was facing eviction and drowning in medical debt at the time of their marriage. Within days of the wedding, all his debts were mysteriously cleared. His daughter was enrolled in an expensive private school. They moved into Victoria's penthouse." Marcus advanced the slide, showing financial records that Daniel recognized with sinking dread. "This isn't a marriage. It's a transaction. My sister purchased a husband to appease the board and maintain her position, and I have proof." He clicked again, and Daniel's heart stopped. On the screen was a photograph of the contract. Their contract. Every clause, every term, every damning detail. "How did you get that?" Victoria's voice was steady, but Daniel could see her hands shaking in her lap. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've defrauded this board and this company. You staged a marriage for professional gain. That's grounds for immediate termination." The room erupted. Board members spoke over each other, demanding explanations. Eleanor called for order, her gavel sharp against the table. Daniel felt like he was drowning, the walls closing in. Then Victoria stood. "You're right," she said clearly, her voice cutting through the chaos. The room fell silent. Marcus's smile widened, triumphant. "That contract is real," Victoria continued. "Daniel and I did enter into a marriage arrangement. I offered to clear his debts in exchange for a public marriage that would satisfy the board's concerns about my personal life. Victoria, don't eat, her lawyer started, but she held up a hand. But Marcus conveniently left out the rest of the story. Yes, we started as a contract. Yes, it was strategic, but that's not where we are now. Daniel stood beside her, taking her hand. Victoria looked at him, then back at the board. What Marcus doesn't understand, what perhaps none of you understand, is that people are capable of change. Situations evolve. When Daniel and I made that arrangement, we were both desperate. He needed financial stability. I needed to maintain my career. It was practical, calculated, everything you'd expect from me. Victoria's voice grew stronger. But we didn't account for what would happen when we actually built a life together. When I started helping his daughter with homework and learning what it meant to be part of a family. When he started showing me that vulnerability isn't weakness and caring about people doesn't mean losing control. She turned to address Marcus directly. You want to expose our marriage as fraudulent? Fine. Here's the truth. It started as fraud. It started as two people making a desperate bargain. But somewhere along the way, somewhere between family dinners and bedtime stories and learning to trust each other, it became real. That's a lovely story, Marcus said smoothly, but the contract says 1 year, with a termination clause and a payout. How exactly does that constitute a real marriage? Daniel stepped forward before Victoria could respond. Because we're tearing up the contract. He pulled the document from his jacket, the original copy Victoria had kept in her safe. In one smooth motion, he ripped it in half. The contract doesn't matter anymore. It hasn't mattered for weeks. We're not staying married because of terms and conditions. We're staying married because we choose to, because we love each other. The room was dead silent. Daniel could see Eleanor watching them with sharp, assessing eyes. The other board members looked uncertain, thrown by this turn. This is ridiculous, Marcus sputtered. You can't just decide the contract doesn't matter. Why not? Victoria challenged. People enter marriages for all kinds of reasons, Marcus. Money, status, convenience, family pressure. Are you suggesting every marriage that doesn't start from romantic love is invalid? Because if so, that includes half the marriages in this room. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor's lips quirked. The question isn't how our marriage started, Victoria continued. The question is whether it's real now. Whether we're committed to each other and to building a life together. And I'm telling you, all of you, that yes, it's real. More real than anything I've ever had. I don't believe you, Marcus said flatly. You're just adapting your strategy. You're too smart to let a contract be your downfall, so you're pivoting to romance. It's what you do. You find an angle and you exploit it. You're right that I'm smart, Victoria said coldly. Smart enough to recognize that I stumbled into something valuable when I wasn't even looking for it. Smart enough to choose love over pride, which is apparently something you'll never understand. Eleanor stood, commanding the room's attention. Enough! This has devolved into family drama rather than professional inquiry. She looked at Victoria, then at Daniel. You've admitted to entering into a fraudulent marriage for professional gain. That alone is grounds for termination. Victoria's face went pale, but she kept her head high. I understand. However, Eleanor continued, you've also presented evidence, albeit unconventional evidence, that this marriage has evolved into a legitimate relationship. The board must now decide whether your initial deception outweighs your current circumstances. She turned to address the full board. We'll take a vote. Those in favor of terminating Victoria Hale as creative director based on these revelations, raise your hand. Daniel held his breath. Marcus's hand shot up immediately. 3 other board members raised theirs more slowly, clearly torn. 4 votes for termination out of 10 board members. Those opposed to termination? Eleanor raised her hand. 4 other members followed, 5 votes against. That leaves 1 vote, Eleanor said, looking at the remaining board member, an older man Daniel recognized from company events. Mr. Chambers, you have the deciding vote. The man, Chambers, looked deeply uncomfortable. He studied Victoria for a long moment, then Daniel, then the torn contract on the table. I've known Victoria Hale for 15 years, he said finally. I've watched her build this company from good to exceptional. I've seen her dedication, her brilliance, her absolute refusal to accept anything less than excellence. He paused, and Daniel's heart sank. This sounded like a eulogy. I've also watched her work herself into isolation. Seen her choose the company over every personal relationship, every opportunity for connection. In all those years, I never once saw her smile the way she smiled when she walked in here today holding her husband's hand. Chambers looked directly at Victoria. Did you start this marriage for professional reasons? Yes. Was that a terrible lapse in judgment? Absolutely. But I've also watched you help my wife with her charity fundraiser last month. You stayed until midnight working on it, not for the company, but because you cared. That's new. That's different. He turned to the rest of the board. I vote against termination. Not because I condone how this started, but because I believe people are capable of growth. And if Victoria Hale has finally learned to value something beyond quarterly reports, that makes her a better leader, not a worse one. The room erupted again. Marcus was on his feet, objecting loudly. Eleanor gavelled for order, her face unreadable. The vote is 6-4 against termination, she announced. Victoria Hale will retain her position as creative director. However, she fixed Victoria with a hard stare. You will be on probation for the next 6 months. Any hint of impropriety, any suggestion that this marriage is anything less than genuine, and this board will revisit this decision. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Mother. Victoria's voice shook slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your husband for destroying that contract so dramatically. Eleanor's tone was dry. It was a good piece of theater. Now get out of here, all of you. This meeting is adjourned. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but Eleanor's expression brooked no disagreement. The board members filed out, some congratulating Victoria, others avoiding eye contact. Marcus stormed past without a word, his face twisted with rage. When the room finally cleared, Victoria collapsed into a chair, her hands covering her face. Daniel knelt beside her. Hey, we did it. You kept your job. Barely. Victoria's voice was muffled. 6 months probation. They're going to be watching us constantly. If we slip up even once, then we don't slip up. Daniel pulled her hands from her face. Victoria, look at me. We just stood in front of a board of executives and admitted we started as a fraud. And we survived. That's incredible. We survived by promising them we're real, by committing to this marriage publicly, permanently. Do you understand what that means? It means we're married, for real this time. Daniel kissed her gently. Isn't that what we decided? What we wanted? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I want that. But Daniel, I almost cost you everything today. If that vote had gone the other way, you would have been implicated in fraud. You could have lost Lily. But we didn't lose. We won. This time, Victoria stood, pacing to the windows. Marcus isn't going to stop. He'll be looking for any opportunity to prove we're faking, to catch us in a lie. Then we make sure there's nothing to catch. Daniel joined her at the window. We live our lives. We raise Lily. We build this marriage into something so solid that no one can tear it down. Victoria turned to face him, and Daniel saw fear and hope warring in her expression. You really want this? You want to stay married to me, knowing my family will always be scrutinizing us? Knowing your life will never be private again? I want to stay married to you because I love you. The rest is just details. The words hung between them, the first time either had said them directly, without qualification or context. Victoria's breath caught. Say that again? I love you, Victoria Hale. I love your brilliant mind and your terrible coffee making and the way you hum when you think no one's listening. I love that you learned about butterflies for Lily. I love that you're fierce and terrifying and completely falling apart right now because you're finally letting yourself care about something more than a campaign. Victoria kissed him like she was drowning and he was air. When they finally broke apart, she was crying and laughing at the same time. I love you too. I love you so much it terrifies me. And I love Lily. And I love this absurd family we've built from a contract and desperation and sheer stubborn hope. They stood there in the empty boardroom, holding each other, while Denver sprawled beneath them, both of them shaking with relief and fear, and something that felt dangerously like happiness. Daniel's phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Chen. Lily wants to know if Mom is okay. What should I tell her? Tell her Mom is perfect, Victoria said, reading over his shoulder. Tell her we're coming home. Home. Not the penthouse, not Victoria's apartment. Home. They gathered their things and left Sterling and Associates hand in hand, the torn contract left behind like shed skin. On the ride home, Victoria was quiet, processing everything that had happened. "I can't believe you ripped up the contract," she said finally. "It seemed like the moment called for drama." "It was incredibly stupid and romantic, and I loved it." Victoria laced her fingers through his. "We probably should have kept it for legal protection." "We don't need legal protection. We have each other." "That's not how the world works, Daniel." "Then maybe we change how the world works." He kissed her hand. "Besides, I have a better contract now." "What's that?" "The marriage certificate we signed. The one that says we're husband and wife until death do us part." Daniel smiled. "No end date, no payout, just us, choosing each other every day." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I never thought I'd want that. Forever with someone. It always seemed like a trap. And now? Now it seems like the only thing worth having." When they arrived at the penthouse, Lily was waiting with Mrs. Chen, practically vibrating with anxiety. The moment they walked in, she ran to Victoria and wrapped herself around her legs. "Did you win? Are you staying?" Victoria picked her up, something she'd gotten better at over the weeks, and held her close. "I'm staying. We're all staying. Forever." "Promise?" "Promise." Victoria looked at Daniel over Lily's head. "This is our family. Nothing's going to change that." Lily squeezed her tighter, and Daniel joined the embrace, the three of them standing in the entryway of the penthouse that had become a home. Mrs. Chen slipped out quietly, and they moved to the living room. Lily wanted to hear everything about the meeting, so they told her an age-appropriate version, that some people had questioned whether their family was real, but they'd proven that it was. "Of course we're real," Lily said, like this was obvious. "We have dinner together and watch movies, and Victoria knows all about butterflies now. That's what families do." "You're absolutely right," Victoria said, smoothing Lily's hair. "Sometimes grown-ups make things more complicated than they need to be." That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on their balcony overlooking the city. The air was cool, stars barely visible through Denver's light pollution, and everything felt both settled and just beginning. "What happens now?" Victoria asked. "Now we live. We work. We raise Lily. We figure out how to be married for real instead of on paper." Daniel pulled her closer. "We survived the probation period and proved to your mother and the board that this is legitimate. And then we just keep going." "That's simple?" "That's simple." Daniel kissed her temple. "The hard part is over, Victoria. We've already survived the worst. Everything from here is just living." Victoria leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth saving, for trusting me with Lily, for turning a contract into something real." Victoria's voice was soft. "For choosing me even when I gave you every reason to run. I chose you because you're worth it, even when you're difficult and controlling and absolutely terrifying." Victoria laughed. "I'm not that bad." "You're exactly that bad, and I love you anyway." They sat there until the city lights blurred and the stars emerged. Two people who'd started as strangers and somehow become each other's everything. The contract that had brought them together was gone, torn to pieces in a boardroom. But what remained was stronger than any legal document. It was choice. It was commitment. It was love built not from romance, but from showing up every day and choosing to stay. And in the apartment behind them, a little girl slept peacefully, dreaming of butterflies finding their way home. The probation period stretched ahead of them like a tightrope walk over a canyon. 6 months of scrutiny, 6 months of proving their marriage was genuine, 6 months of living under a microscope while Marcus waited for them to slip. But as the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. The performance stopped feeling like performance at all. 2 months after the board meeting, Daniel woke to find Victoria's side of the bed empty. He'd grown used to her warmth beside him, the way she curled into his chest in sleep, the soft sounds of her breathing. Her absence pulled him awake, and he found her in Lily's room, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching their daughter sleep. "Hey," Daniel whispered from the doorway. "Everything okay?" Victoria turned, and even in the dim light from the hallway, he could see the tears on her face. "She called me Mom yesterday. At school, in front of her teacher, just casually, like it's always been that way. My mom is picking me up today." Daniel crossed to her, sitting on Lily's other side. "That's a good thing." "I know, it's just..." Victoria's voice caught. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not enough for her? I never had a good relationship with my own mother. What if I don't know how to do this? You're already doing it. Daniel took her hand. You show up, you listen, you care. That's all any kid really needs. It doesn't feel like enough. It's more than enough. Look at her, Victoria. She's happy. She's thriving. She has two parents who love her. Daniel kissed Victoria's temple. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're allowed to just be happy. Victoria leaned into him, and they sat there in the quiet darkness, watching Lily sleep, this child who'd somehow become theirs together. After a while, Victoria spoke again. The original contract would have expired next month. Daniel hadn't thought about it in weeks, but she was right. November marked 1 year since they'd signed those papers, since Victoria had made her impossible proposal in that corner office. Good thing we tore it up then. Good thing. Victoria's fingers traced patterns on his palm. I keep thinking about who we were back then, how desperate and scared and certain this would never be anything more than business. And now? Now I can't imagine my life without you, without either of you. Victoria turned to look at him. That terrifies me more than any board meeting ever could. Why? Because I have something to lose now. Something that matters more than the company or my career or anything else. If something happened to you or Lily, her voice broke. I don't know how I'd survive it. Daniel pulled her close. Nothing's going to happen to us. We're careful, we're healthy, we're safe. Emily was careful and healthy and safe too. The words landed like a stone in dark water. They rarely talked about Emily, Daniel's first wife, the ghost that sometimes haunted the edges of their family. But Victoria was right. Life was unpredictable. Tragedy didn't announce itself. Emily would have liked you, Daniel said quietly. She would have liked that Lily has someone who teaches her about butterflies and stays up late helping with science projects. You think so? I know so. Em wanted Lily to be happy more than anything, and she is happy because of you. Victoria wiped her eyes. I'm being ridiculous. It's 3 in the morning and I'm having an existential crisis in our daughter's bedroom. Our daughter, I like when you say that. Me too. Victoria stood, pulling Daniel up with her. Come on, we both have work in a few hours. I need to at least pretend to sleep. They returned to their bedroom, and Victoria curled against Daniel's chest like she belonged there. Because she did belong there. That was the truth they'd stumbled into. This family wasn't built on contracts or convenience anymore. It was built on the small moments, the quiet choices, the decision to keep showing up for each other. The next morning brought chaos in the form of Lily's announcement over breakfast that her class was doing a family tree project. We have to draw everyone in our family and write about them, Lily explained, syrup dripping from her waffle. Can you help me, Mom? Victoria looked up from her coffee, surprised. Of course. What do you need? Well, I have Daddy, and I have you, and I had my first mom, Emily, in heaven. But what about your family? Do I put Grandma Eleanor and Uncle Marcus? The question hung in the air. Daniel watched Victoria's face carefully, knowing this was complicated territory. Eleanor had warmed to them slightly since the board meeting, but Marcus remained hostile. Family dinners at the estate were tense affairs that they attended monthly out of obligation. You can include whoever you want, Victoria said carefully. Grandma Eleanor is your grandmother, so yes, she belongs on your tree. And Marcus is technically your uncle, even if he's not always nice. What about your dad? Daddy said he died before I was born. That's right. His name was Robert. He would have loved you. Victoria's voice was soft. He loved butterflies too. He used to take me to the botanical gardens when I was little. Lily's eyes lit up. Really? Can we go there? All 3 of us? Absolutely. This weekend if you want. Daniel watched this exchange, marveling at how naturally Victoria had slipped into the role. She anticipated Lily's needs, remembered her interests, made promises she actually kept. The woman who'd once scheduled every minute of her day now rearranged meetings to attend school plays and parent-teacher conferences. That Saturday, they spent the afternoon at the botanical gardens. Lily ran ahead on the paths, pointing out different flowers and insects, while Daniel and Victoria followed hand in hand. The autumn air was crisp, leaves turning gold and red against a brilliant blue sky. My father proposed to my mother here, Victoria said as they walked through the Japanese garden. right by that bridge. She said yes because his family had the right connections, and he said yes because her family had money. Very romantic. Sounds familiar. Victoria laughed. Except they never figured out how to be more than a strategic partnership. 43 years of polite distance in separate bedrooms. Is that what you thought marriage was supposed to be? It's all I ever saw growing up. My parents were cordial colleagues who happened to share a house and a last name. I genuinely didn't know marriage could be different until she stopped walking, turning to face him. Until you. Daniel pulled her close, kissing her there in the garden where her father had made a proposal built on strategy. We're writing a different story. A better one. Victoria rested her forehead against his, though it did start pretty similar to theirs. Business arrangement, calculated benefit. Yeah, but we were smart enough to fall in love. Daddy! Mom! Come see! Lily's voice carried across the garden. She was crouched by a flower bed, pointing excitedly at something. They joined her to find a monarch butterfly resting on a marigold, its wings slowly opening and closing in the sunlight. Lily's face was pure wonder. It's so pretty, she whispered. Do you think it's going to Mexico soon for the migration? Probably, Victoria said, kneeling beside her. It's about that time of year. They're getting ready for the journey. That's so far. How do they know the way? They just know. It's instinct. Something inside them tells them where home is. Victoria glanced at Daniel. Even if they've never been there before, they can find it. The butterfly lifted off, wings catching the light, and Lily watched it disappear into the sky with rapt attention. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. The simple perfection of this moment, the three of them together, watching something beautiful and fleeting. This was what he'd been missing when he signed that contract, not just financial stability or a roof over their heads, but this. Connection. Family. Love that felt as natural as breathing. The probation period ended on a Tuesday in early December. Eleanor called Victoria into her office, not the boardroom, just a private meeting. Daniel waited at home with Lily, trying not to pace, checking his phone every 30 seconds. When Victoria finally walked through the door 2 hours later, her face was unreadable. Well? Daniel asked, his heart in his throat. Victoria set down her bag with deliberate care. The board voted unanimously to end my probation. I'm fully reinstated as creative director with no restrictions. That's amazing. Victoria, that's... Daniel stopped when he saw her expression. What's wrong? Marcus resigned. He's leaving Sterling and Associates entirely. Victoria sank onto the couch. Mother gave him an ultimatum. Stop fighting this marriage in my position, or leave the company. He chose to leave. Why do you look upset? He's been trying to destroy you for months. Because he's still my brother. Half-brother, yes. And we've never been close, but... Victoria's voice cracked. He said some terrible things when he left, about how I'd poisoned Mother against him, how I'd chosen a fake family over real blood. And the worst part is I don't even care. I don't care that he's gone. I care more about whether Lily's science test went well than whether my brother is speaking to me. Daniel sat beside her, pulling her close. That's not a bad thing, Victoria. That's called having priorities, choosing the people who actually care about you. Is it, though? Or am I becoming my mother, putting business and strategy over family? You're nothing like your mother. Eleanor chose her company over her children. You're choosing your child over your company. There's a difference. Victoria was quiet for a moment, processing. Mother said something else. She said she was wrong. About what? About marriage, about me. She said watching us over the past 6 months reminded her of how she and my father should have been. That we actually care about each other, actually try. Victoria's laugh was bitter. 43 years of marriage, and in the end, she learned something from her daughter's fake one. It's not fake anymore. It stopped being fake the moment we decided it mattered more than the contract. I know, Victoria turned to look at him. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met differently? If you'd never been desperate for money, and I'd never needed to prove myself to the board? Sometimes. But then I remember that we probably never would have met at all. You were the boss. I was the struggling copywriter. Our lives didn't overlap in any meaningful way. So you think desperation was necessary? That we needed to be broken to find each other? Daniel considered this. I think we needed to be vulnerable. And maybe that's the same thing. I was vulnerable because I had nothing left to lose. You were vulnerable because you finally admitted you needed something beyond your career. And now? Now we're still vulnerable, but we're vulnerable together, and that makes all the difference. Victoria kissed him, soft and slow and full of everything they'd become to each other. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Lily's science test went great, by the way. She got a 97. She's very proud of herself. She should be. Did you tell her about your probation ending? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Victoria stood, pulling him up. Let's tell her together. Maybe celebrate with dinner out? That Thai place she loves? Perfect. They found Lily in her room, surrounded by colored pencils and paper, working on her family tree project. The drawing had expanded significantly. Stick figures representing not just immediate family, but extended relatives, friends, even Mrs. Chen, who'd watched Lily through those early, uncertain days. Mom, Daddy, look, I finished it. Lily held up the poster board proudly. Daniel studied the drawing, his throat tight. There in the center were three figures holding hands, Daddy, Mom, and Lily. Above them, a smaller figure labeled Emily in Heaven with angel wings. Branches extended outward showing Grandma Eleanor, friends from school, Victoria's late father. But what caught Daniel's attention was the text Lily had written at the bottom in her careful handwriting. My family is special because we chose each other. Mom says that's the best kind of family. Victoria made a small sound beside him, and Daniel saw tears streaming down her face. She knelt beside Lily, pulling her into a fierce hug. It's perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect. Do you think my teacher will like it? Your teacher is going to love it, because it's true. We did choose each other, and that does make us special. Victoria kissed the top of Lily's head. And speaking of special, we have good news. My work probation is over. They said I can stay and keep doing my job. Was there a chance you couldn't? Lily's eyes went wide with worry. There was. But we proved that our family is real, and now everything's going to be okay. Victoria glanced at Daniel. Better than okay. We thought we'd celebrate with dinner at your favorite Thai restaurant. Sound good? Yes, Lily jumped up. Can I get spring rolls and pad see you? You can get whatever you want. As Lily ran to change clothes, Victoria and Daniel stood together, looking at the family tree. Daniel put his arm around his wife, his real wife, not his contracted one, and felt the weight of the past year settle into something like peace. We did it, he said quietly. We actually pulled this off. We did more than that. We built something real from something fake. That's... Victoria's voice caught. That's more than I ever thought I could have. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a blur of activity. Lily's first school holiday concert where she sang off-key and Daniel and Victoria applauded like she'd performed at Carnegie Hall. Shopping for gifts, Victoria insisting they include stockings for everyone including Mrs. Chen. Decorating the penthouse, which had never seen a Christmas tree before, and now sported a massive one that Lily had chosen herself. On Christmas Eve, Eleanor hosted dinner at the estate. Without Marcus there, the atmosphere was lighter, almost pleasant. Eleanor had even smiled when Lily presented her with a handmade card. You're good for her, Eleanor said to Daniel and Victoria as they prepared to leave. Both of you. I see the way you are together, and it's... She paused, choosing words carefully. It's what marriage should be. I'm glad my daughter found that, even if she had to take an unconventional path to get there. In the car ride home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from excitement. Daniel drove while Victoria turned to look at their daughter, her expression soft. When the contract ended, Victoria said quietly, I was supposed to pay you a final settlement, $100,000. I never did. I know, I didn't want it. What if I want to do something else with that money? Victoria turned to face him. Something for all of us? Like what? Like buying a house? A real house with a yard where Lily can play. Maybe a dog. A place that's ours together, not just my penthouse that you moved into. Daniel's heart skipped. Are you serious? Completely. The penthouse is beautiful, but it's not a home for a child. It's not a home for a family. I want something different, something that's ours from the beginning. Victoria Hale wants to leave her perfect penthouse for suburban domesticity. Victoria Harper wants her daughter to have grass to run in and neighbors to play with, and maybe a garden where we can plant flowers. Victoria's smile was tentative. What do you think? I think you just called yourself Victoria Harper. Well, that is my legal name now. I changed it officially last week. Thought it was time to make it official in all the ways. Daniel had to pull over because his vision was blurring with tears. He turned to Victoria, this brilliant, complicated woman who'd started as his boss and become his everything. I love you so much, it's ridiculous. I love you too. So is that a yes to the house? That's a yes to whatever you want. Wherever you want to be, that's where I want to be too. They found the house in February, a modest but charming craftsman in a neighborhood with good schools and tree-lined streets. It had a backyard, a front porch, and exactly none of the sleek minimalism of the penthouse. It was warm and imperfect and felt like home the moment they walked in. Lily ran through the rooms, claiming the one with the window seat as hers, already planning where her drawings would go. Victoria stood in the kitchen, which needed updating but had good bones, and looked at Daniel with something like wonder. Is this really happening? Are we really doing this? We're really doing this, Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind. New house, new beginning, same family. Same family, Victoria repeated. I like the sound of that. They moved in on a rainy April afternoon, the three of them plus Mrs. Chen, who insisted on helping. The house slowly filled with boxes, a mix of Victoria's expensive furniture and Daniel's worn pieces and new things they'd chosen together. Lily's room came together first. Priority on the child, Victoria had insisted, and by evening she was settled in with her stuffed animals and her drawings of butterflies. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new room, Daniel and Victoria sat on the back porch watching rain fall on their yard. The house still smelled like paint and possibility. Everything was unfinished, imperfect, exactly right. I never thought I'd want this, Victoria said, leaning against Daniel. House in the suburbs, white picket fence life. I thought I'd always choose career and independence. You didn't choose one over the other, you just made room for both. Maybe. Or maybe I finally figured out what actually matters. Victoria turned to look at him. Thank you, by the way, for taking that insane meeting a year ago, for saying yes to my ridiculous proposal, for turning it into something real. Thank you for seeing something worth saving in a desperate single dad with nothing to offer. You had everything to offer, you just couldn't see it yet. Victoria kissed him softly. You taught me how to be human again, how to care about something beyond profit margins and campaign results. That's worth more than any contract could ever be. They sat there as the rain continued, the house settling around them, their daughters sleeping safely upstairs. Daniel thought about the eviction notice that had started all this, the desperate proposal, the contract that had seemed like his only option, every impossible choice that had led to this moment. Do you think we would have made it? Victoria asked. If the board had fired me? If we'd lost everything? Yeah, I do, because by then we weren't fighting for your career or my financial security. We were fighting for each other, for Lily, for this. Daniel gestured at the house, the life they'd built. That's stronger than any job or any amount of money. Very philosophical for a former copywriter. Current copywriter, thank you. I still work for Sterling and Associates. For now. But you know you could do anything you want, right? You don't have to stay just because you're married to the boss. Victoria's tone was serious. If you wanted to pursue something else, I'd support that. Daniel had been thinking about this, actually. His work at the agency was fine, but lately he'd been writing more. Short stories, essays, things that had nothing to do with selling products. Victoria had read some of them and called them brilliant, though she was admittedly biased. Maybe someday. Right now I'm happy where I am. He pulled her closer. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on you at the office. Make sure you don't work yourself into the ground. I have Lily for that. She's very firm about family dinner time. She learned from the best. They went inside when the rain picked up, checking on Lily one more time before heading to their own bedroom. The space was half unpacked, boxes stacked against walls, but the bed was made, and that's all that mattered. They fell asleep tangled together, exhausted and happy, exactly where they belonged. Summer brought new routines. Lily spent mornings at day camp while Daniel worked from home, having negotiated a flexible schedule. Victoria had cut back her hours too, determined to be present for family dinners and bedtime stories. On weekends, they worked on the house, painting walls, planting a garden. building the life they designed together. In July, Eleanor came for lunch, her first visit to the house. She walked through the rooms with the same assessing eyes she'd turned on their marriage months before. "It's smaller than the penthouse," she observed. "It has a yard," Victoria countered, "and neighbors, and a school Lily can walk to." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Your father and I had a house like this when we were first married, before the money, before the company got big. I sometimes think those were our happiest years, though we didn't know it at the time." She turned to look at Victoria, and something in her expression was softer than Daniel had ever seen it. "I'm proud of you. Not for Sterling and Associates or your campaign wins or any of that. I'm proud of you for this." Eleanor gestured at the house, at Lily playing in the yard, at Daniel standing beside Victoria. "You chose happiness over ambition. That takes courage I never had." After Eleanor left, Victoria was quiet for a long time. They sat on the front porch, watching Lily chase butterflies in the garden they'd planted together. "She's never said she was proud of me before," Victoria said finally. "Not once in 36 years. She meant it. I could see it." "I know. That's what makes it so strange." Victoria leaned into him. "All those years I worked myself half to death trying to earn her approval, and all it took was walking away from everything she valued. Not walking away, reprioritizing. Same difference." Victoria smiled. "But you're right. I didn't walk away from Sterling and Associates. I just made it one part of my life instead of the whole thing." That night, after Lily was in bed, they worked on the last unpacked box, wedding gifts from colleagues and acquaintances who'd sent presents when the marriage was announced. Most were generic, picture frames, kitchen gadgets, decorative items that had sat in storage for months. But at the bottom of the box, Victoria found an envelope. No return address, just her name and handwriting she didn't recognize. Inside was a card and a check for $50,000. The card read, "For the family you chose to become, use it for something that matters. R.C." "R.C., Victoria said slowly. "Richard Chambers, the board member who cast the deciding vote." Daniel looked at the check, stunned. "This is incredibly generous. Why would he—" "Because he believed in us when no one else did." Victoria's eyes were wet. "He voted to give us a chance, and now he wants to invest in that chance. What should we do with it?" Victoria looked around their house, still imperfect, still needing work, but undeniably theirs. Then she looked at Daniel, and her smile was radiant. College fund for Lily. Every penny. That's what matters. They set up the fund the next day, ensuring their daughter's future in the most concrete way possible. And when Lily asked what the celebration dinner was for, they told her the truth, that someone had given them a gift because they believed in their family. "People believe in us?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. "Lots of people," Daniel said, "because we're real, and that matters." The first anniversary of their actual wedding, not the contract, but the moment they'd torn it up and chosen each other, fell on a Saturday in September. Daniel had planned something small, just the three of them, but Victoria had other ideas. "I want to renew our vows," she announced over breakfast. "Something public, something real, a ceremony that celebrates what we've become." "Like a wedding?" "Like a commitment ceremony. No contracts this time, just promises. I want to stand in front of people and tell them I choose you, that I choose this family, that I'm in this forever." Victoria reached across the table for his hand. "What do you think?" "I think that sounds perfect." They held the ceremony in their backyard on a perfect autumn afternoon, the garden they'd planted together in full bloom. Lily wore a flower crown and served as the only attendant. Eleanor came, looking elegant and almost happy. Mrs. Chen was there, and several of their friends from work, and Chambers who'd believed in them from the start. There was no officiant, no legal paperwork, just Victoria and Daniel standing beneath an arch covered in butterflies. Paper ones that Lily had spent weeks making, decorating each one with careful detail. "A year ago," Victoria began, her voice steady despite the tears on her face, "I asked you to marry me for all the wrong reasons. Money, career, strategy. I thought I could keep my heart separate from the arrangement. I was wrong." She squeezed his hands, and Daniel could see everything they'd been through reflected in her eyes. "You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that needing people doesn't make you less capable, that love isn't a transaction to be managed, but a choice to be made every single day. Victoria's voice broke slightly. I choose you, Daniel Harper, today and every day, not because of a contract, but because you're my home. You and Lily are my home. Daniel had written his own vows on note cards, but when the moment came, he set them aside. The words he needed weren't written down. They were carved into his heart from a year of living and choosing and becoming. When I signed that contract, I thought I was trading dignity for survival. I thought I was giving up everything that mattered for money to keep my daughter safe. I was wrong, too. He reached out to pull Lily close, including her in the circle. Victoria, you gave me more than financial security. You gave me partnership. You gave Lily a mother who teaches her about butterflies and stays up late helping with projects. You gave us a family. He looked at Eleanor, at their friends, at everyone who'd doubted and believed and witnessed their journey. This woman standing beside me is the bravest person I know. She risked everything, her career, her reputation, her carefully controlled life, to let us in. And every day since, she's chosen to keep letting us in. To be messy and imperfect and gloriously human. Daniel cupped Victoria's face gently. I choose you too. Always. Not because I have to, but because I can't imagine choosing anyone else. They kissed while their friends applauded and Lily cheered, and somewhere overhead a real monarch butterfly passed through the garden, heading south toward Mexico on instinct and faith. The party continued into the evening, laughter filling their yard as the sun set over Denver. Daniel watched Victoria move through their guests, her face bright with happiness, and felt overwhelmed by the impossible beauty of what they'd built. Later, when everyone had gone and Lily was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on their back porch like they had so many nights before. The paper butterflies still hung from the arch, moving gently in the breeze. Thank you for today, Victoria said quietly, for standing up there and choosing me again. I'd choose you 1,000 times over. 1,000,000 times. Daniel pulled her close. You know what the craziest part is? If you offered me that contract today, if I could go back to that moment in your office and say no, take a different path, I wouldn't change a thing. Not even the desperate poverty and eviction notices? Not even that, because that's what led me here. To you, to this house, to this life. I'd survive it all again if it meant ending up exactly here. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to face him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air like stars. Daniel's brain stuttered, trying to process what he'd just heard. You're what? Pregnant. About 8 weeks. I found out last week, but I wanted to wait until after the ceremony to tell you. Victoria's hand moved to her still flat stomach. We're having a baby, Daniel. An actual, biological, planned baby. Daniel couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. All he could do was pull Victoria into his arms and hold her while his entire world reorganized itself around this new truth. They were having a baby. A child who would be both of theirs from the very beginning, who would never question whether this family was real because they would be living proof of it. Are you happy? Victoria asked, her voice small and uncertain. I know we never discussed having more children. I should have asked before. I'm happy. I'm so happy I can't even find words for it. Daniel pulled back to look at her face. You're really pregnant? We're really doing this? We're really doing this. Again. Though hopefully this time without the debt and desperation and corporate intrigue. Daniel laughed through tears, pulling her close again. How does Lily feel about being a big sister? I haven't told her yet. I wanted you to know first. Victoria's hand found his. I thought maybe we could tell her together tomorrow. Make it a family announcement. A family announcement for our family. Daniel shook his head in wonder. A year ago, I was sleeping in a crumbling apartment, wondering how I'd feed my daughter. Now I'm sitting in a house I own with a wife I love telling me we're having a baby. How is this my life? It's our life. We built it together. Victoria kissed him softly. From a contract and desperation and a whole lot of stubborn faith that maybe, just maybe, we could make something real out of something fake. They told Lily the next morning over pancakes, her favorite breakfast. She processed the news with the seriousness of a 7-year-old trying to understand adult concepts. So, there's a baby in your tummy right now? She asked Victoria. A very tiny one, yes. About the size of a raspberry. Lily considered this. And it's going to grow bigger and then come out and be my sister or brother? That's exactly right. What do you think about that? Lily's face split into a massive grin. I think that's the best thing ever. Can I help take care of it? Can I teach it about butterflies? Can I show it my room? You can do all of those things, Daniel said, pulling her into a hug. You're going to be an amazing big sister. The best big sister. Lily's expression turned serious. Will the baby know you're its mom? Like really its mom? Not like how you became my mom? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Yes, sweetheart. The baby will know I'm its mom from the very beginning, but that doesn't make you any less my daughter. You're my daughter because we chose each other. The baby will be my child because I'm carrying it. Both are real. Both matter just as much. Lily seemed satisfied with this answer. She spent the rest of breakfast planning what she'd teach the new baby, from butterfly facts to the best way to make pancakes to how to draw. As the months passed and Victoria's pregnancy became visible, their lives continued to settle into something that looked remarkably like the happiness Daniel had once thought was impossible. Sterling and Associates thrived under Victoria's leadership. She'd proven that balance between work and family only made her sharper, more focused, better at everything she did. Daniel had started writing more seriously, working on a novel in the early mornings before Lily woke up. They painted a nursery together, choosing soft yellows and greens because they'd decided not to find out the baby's sex. Lily helped pick out stuffed animals and books, building a library for her future sibling with the same care she brought to her butterfly collection. In January, on a cold Denver afternoon, Victoria went into labor. Lily stayed with Eleanor, a development that would have been unthinkable a year ago, but now felt natural. And 12 hours later, Daniel held his son for the first time. They named him James Robert Harper, James for Daniel's father, who'd died and left them in debt. Robert for Victoria's father, who'd loved butterflies and gardens. He was perfect and tiny and absolutely real, this child who proved that their marriage had become something far beyond what either of them had imagined. When they brought James home, Lily appointed herself his personal protector and guide. She sang to him, read him stories he was too young to understand, explained everything about their family with the authority of someone who'd lived it. "This is your mom and dad," she told baby James seriously, holding his tiny hand. "They got married because daddy needed help and mom needed to prove something to mean people. But then they fell in love for real. So you're very lucky because you have parents who know that being a family is a choice you make every day, not just something that happens to you." Victoria, overhearing this from the doorway, had to sit down because she was crying too hard to stand. Daniel found her there and pulled her close while Lily continued educating their infant son about the nature of chosen families. "We did it," Victoria whispered. "We actually did it. We took something impossible and made it real." "We took something real and made it impossible to deny," Daniel corrected. "This family, this love, it was always real. We just had to figure that out." Spring came again, bringing with it the return of the butterflies. On a sunny afternoon in April, they took James and Lily to the botanical gardens where Victoria's father had proposed to her mother all those years ago. Where Victoria and Daniel had brought Lily when they were still figuring out how to be a family. They stood by the same bridge, watching monarchs float past on their way north, carried by instinct and determination toward home. Lily held James carefully, pointing out each butterfly to him, her voice bright with the certainty that her baby brother needed to know these important things. "They always find their way home," she told him. "Even when they've never been there before. They just know." Victoria leaned into Daniel and he wrapped his arm around her, holding his entire world in that moment. His wife, his children, his improbable family built from contracts and desperation, and the stubborn faith that maybe broken people could build something whole. "Do you ever regret it?" Victoria asked quietly. "Taking that meeting? Saying yes to my insane proposal?" Daniel looked at Lily, teaching James about butterfly migration, at Victoria's face turned toward the sun, at the life they'd built from nothing but need and choice and love. Not for a single second. Even knowing how hard it would be? The scrutiny, the doubt, all of it? Especially knowing how hard it would be, because that's what made it real. Daniel turned her to face him, cupping her face in his hands. "Easy things don't matter, Victoria. They don't change you. But the hard things, the impossible things you fight for and build against all odds, Those are the things that become your foundation. Victoria kissed him there in the garden, while their children watched butterflies and the city spread out below them, and the future unfolded in all its unpredictable beauty. They'd started with a contract that promised 1 year and nothing more. They'd built a lifetime instead, because that's what love did. It took transactions and transformed them into commitments. It took strangers and made them family. It took broken people and gave them something worth being whole for. The marriage that began as Daniel Harper's desperate survival plan had become something neither of them could have negotiated. A real family built not on contracts but on choice, not on strategy, but on the small daily decision to keep showing up for each other. And as they walked back to their car, Lily holding James and chattering about butterflies, Victoria and Daniel holding hands like teenagers, the paper butterflies from their vow renewal ceremony tucked safely away at home, they knew with absolute certainty that this was the story they were always meant to find. Not the one they'd planned, not the one they'd bargained for, but the one they'd chosen, the one they'd built together, the only one that had ever really mattered.